how they're actually working in this business because January is like sounds good. So you can take that to your family. Oh, hey. Okay. So swearing in is not going to be yeah. Nice to meet you. Uh-oh. Okay. Yeah.
Thanks for your help and everything.
The kids down the school.
Well, I just
Test, 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 test. Test, test.
And then I have Mason for the
down. Here we're gonna be on here. Yeah. That's good that we're okay, let me call you a different. Yes, maybe even less. Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm just missing like big assignments. I know the haiku discussions.
Okay.
Can I
Okay, later.
the one where you chose one of the amendments? Half on your floor.
Hi, nice to meet you. Hi, Chris. Joanna. Nice to meet you, too. Look at all the seats right up front.
Yeah, I don't know who this is. We have 89.4.
Hey, I'm gonna. Here, I'm gonna.
Good evening. Let me call to order the regular City Council meeting for the City of St. Helena for December 11th, 2018. Next item is Pledge of Allegiance. Would the Mayor-elect please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is public forum. This is an opportunity for...
Roll call.
Ooh, roll call. I jumped over that. I'm always jumping over something, so habits continue to the last meeting.
Mayor Galbraith.
Here.
Vice Mayor White.
Here.
Councilmember Doring.
Here.
Ellsworth.
Here.
Coverstein.
Here.
Public forum. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address us with respect to matters not on our agenda this evening. Public comment is limited to 4 minutes per comment. Does anybody wish to speak at public forum? Seeing none, we will next move to reports by staff and City Council, future agenda items, and AB 1234 reports. Let me begin with the City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to take an opportunity as we near the end of this year to thank our staff for all their contributions throughout the year. We had a celebration this past week acknowledging all the work that they do, but this is a staff that works 24/7 for this community, our police officers, our firefighters, all of our departments. And I know the Public Works Director, City Engineer will speak more to some of the work they've been doing in recent weeks on Oak Avenue. So just wanted to take an opportunity to acknowledge them.
Okay. City Attorney? Ms. Mitz? Mr. Papoulis? Mr. Hausch?
Briefly, I'd just like to remind everyone that the comment period on the general plan EIR ends on January 2nd. So if you have any comments, please provide them to the planning department prior to 5 o'clock on that day. Thank you.
Ms. Smithies, I know you've got something.
Got a couple items. One is the Lyman Park restroom project is completed. We have some minor ADA accessibility work to do to complete that end, but the building itself is open and usable to the public and timing for Jingle All the Way. We'll be bringing a notice of completion to council in January for the contractor. We are going to be rebidding, repackaging the downtown restroom project and hopefully be coming back to council in January with some good bids. And the emergency storm drain update. To date, we're in day 12 of the emergency work that's began on Friday, November 30th. And we've spent about $167,000 a date of the contractor has provided a bill this afternoon. During the work, they're going to be replacing about 550 feet of storm drain to Mitchell Drive. In addition, there was conflicts found this last week with water utilities. We have some aging pipe out there, as people know, are about 1930s infrastructure. The water line main portions of it probably dated back to the 1940s, as we're using some of those as-built plans to find old valves and linkages to do the proper shutdown. As everyone noticed, there was water around Main Street and different side streets. It's because they had to flush lines to bring the proper closure this morning. They're thinking another full week, completely patched up, asphalt done, and out. We'll provide an update. Provide an update to council hopefully in January with a notice of completion. But we're hoping to use some of the funds from water main funds to replace, to offset some of the funds that were brought to your attention tonight, because we didn't realize there was a direct conflict overhead in line with the storm drain, about 230 feet of water main was found right above head of the storm drain, so it made sense to replace that old ductile iron pipe, as well as the tying at the manhole at Spring Street and Oak. There was a cross of valves to each of those side streets, so we're replacing some of our city water main infrastructure at the same time as this project. It just made good fiscal sense. The cost appropriation for that's about approximately $150,000, but if we're going in the way we are now, we'll probably be well under the $450,000 that we are requesting tonight in our consent.
All right, so you're requesting $350,000, $100,000 in contingency, and what you're saying is that if all goes well, you won't need more than the contingency that you're requesting this evening.
Correct.
And I guess the other question I have is, this is sort of incremental. We had the section from the Catholic Church down to Spring Street, and now we've got Spring Street down to Mitchell, basically. And what about in the other direction? Are we likely to face similar issues as you go north under Oak Avenue from the storm drain?
Well, as our utility master plan consultant, Carollo Engineers, gets rolling, we're right now scanning and packaging all our old files, all our existing flat files to them as we speak, so they can go through their detail, by plan to see the age of our infrastructure, as well as doing visual inspections. We know now that at least the Tainter section of Mitchell Drive is taken care of as far as the storm drain section, but we should definitely prioritize our sewer main videoing in that location as well, because I'm pretty sure that's probably the same age of infrastructure we have out there. But as far as the other infrastructure, hopefully that'll come to light in early 2019 as our utility plan gets underway.
Right. Are there any other questions by council members of the Public Works Director? Okay. I think I saw Ms. Crichton here. Does she have any report?
Hi, and besides wishing everyone here a happy holidays from the library, this Thursday at 6 p.m. we're going to have a make-your-own gingerbread house decorating for kids. So every family is invited to come. Gingerbread house will be provided. And all next week at 3 p.m. the library will have kids dropping crafts. And on Thursday we'll have a puppet show. So if your kids are stuck at home, they're welcome at the library. Thank you.
Mr. Pitchley?
Good evening. We just want to thank everybody who came out for our Home for the Holidays event on November 30th in front of the Carnegie Building. And please stop by, take a picture of our tree, hashtag St. Helena Rec. Also, Jingle All the Way continues every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Thursdays and Fridays, it's from 4 to 8. And on Saturdays and Sundays, it's from 12 to 8. The first hour of each day is free to kids. Thank you.
Okay, very good. I think I've spotted all the city senior managers at this point, so let me turn to Ms. Koberstein. Mr. Ellsworth?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Mr. Presswich said about thanking the staff for the incredible work. All departments this year have been incredible. I wanted to give a special shout out these last few weeks to the Parks and Rec for the holiday tree lighting and the Jingle All the Way skating event, and also the Chamber of Commerce. I think the city and the Chamber worked really well together putting this event on, so I wanted to thank them as well.
All right. Mr. Dorn?
I have nothing, thank you.
Mr. White? I have nothing other than I would also echo what Mr. Ellsworth just said. That then takes us to presentations and public recognitions, and we start and perhaps finish this item with the Chamber of Commerce. Ms. Caraba, Amy Caraba.
Thank you so much. I first want to start and thank not only City Council, but the City of St. Helena. We are so grateful to have this continued partnership with the Chamber and the City. And I do feel that we've made so much progress in the last year since I've taken over as CEO. Our partnership has been really, really strong, especially with Jingle All the Way. It's been very successful, and we just hope to continue the partnership. So we're very grateful for your support, and we're very grateful for our city contract, and we are appreciative, and we hope we can continue to keep marketing the city and really growing our efforts for the city of St. Helena on behalf of the Chamber. So I kind of prepared, we want to give you a little bit of an update. I want to streamline communication with the chamber and the city so that you're not just seeing one presentation a year on what we're basically doing for the city of St. Helena. So we're going to start to do this a little bit more regularly so you know exactly what the chamber is doing for the city. So I prepared a little bit of a document, and I'm going to kind of just start back based from July when the new fiscal year started. We moved our location to Main Street, which has been really exciting. Our foot traffic for our new location, you're going to see, that's the website. We're going to get to that in a minute. But our foot traffic for our new location on Main Street has doubled. I mean, it's increased, and I provided a document to show you those numbers. So we're passing out double the maps to visitors. Just December alone, based on our numbers from December 9th of this month, we've already had 882 visitors. And that's tremendous because last year it was half that. Obviously, we had the fire, so it was a little bit slower. But the numbers are up. And one of the reasons I think December is so busy is because we're doing events out of the chamber office. We're doing wine pouring events. We've got Santa at the chamber 3 different days on the 1st, the 8th, and the 15th. We've teamed up with the Boys and Girls Club for complimentary gift wrapping, which is this Friday, and also on the 22nd. So those events draw people to Main Street, which will then in turn want to shop on Main Street and linger on Main Street, which will help support our businesses. So that's kind of our tactic with holding events out of the Welcome Center. We launched retail in the Welcome Center, which has been really, really great so far. It's been great for the chamber. It's a great way to market and brand our city with branded products, with our hashtag, with St. Helena branded items. And we were really specific on the items that we picked. So it's not, they're really classy items to represent the city. And it's been doing really, really well. And we were very specific that we would have items so we're not competing with our businesses on Main Street, different items. And we also launched tourist itineraries that we didn't really have in the Welcome Center. So when people come in, we can basically accommodate them with different plans and ideas, whether it's a shopping excursion or, of course, a wine tasting excursion or a girlfriend's getaway in St. Helena. These are just marketing tactics, again, to bring more people here to the city and enjoy the city that we love. We launched a new website, which you're seeing here. This was really my baby, something that I worked really closely with our web developer. We obviously had a limited budget, but we really needed to improve our website. The biggest problem that we had with our website was that it was lacking SEO and analytics. So if people were to go to Google and type in Napa Valley wine tasting, St. Helena, the city was not popping up. And that is huge. We want to grasp on that for visitors that are coming in the area. So we boosted our SEO and analytics about 75%. And you can see the design of the website. We've included our social media because we know social media is one of the best forms of marketing. So that is right on the front page. That's a live feed. We also have video elements that are going to be added. But the biggest thing is this. It's actually our events page. Our web developer feels very strongly that events are one of the number one reasons people actually go to a city website when they're looking for an event. And so you can see we've got Jingle All the Way there with all the daily activities for that, our gift wrapping, and we have events, of course, from our members. Basically promoting them and their events, again, to bring people here to the area to want to do something fun in St. Helena. So far the website, I provided some numbers with you. Basically, our users is up about 19%, which is pretty good. Our sessions is up 17%, so people are staying on the website longer, which is great. And one of the biggest things we changed also about the website is our old website was actually driving traffic away, and now it just stays on the website. So that was a really big improvement. We're not fishing people anywhere. They're just staying here, and they're spending a lot more time on the website. We've seen, I don't want to say tremendous growth overall, because when you launch a brand new website, typically with my experience in the past, what happens is you end up dropping and then you drive up. So I was actually expecting us to drop in traffic because that's statistically what happens when you launch a brand new website. That did not happen, so that was great. we just did a slight increase in traffic. So I was really pleased with that we didn't dip. And now the goal is that we are just going to continue to drive up and up and up and see more traffic as we heavily promote it. And we are tag teaming our promotion with the website on social media, and I will get to that in 1 minute. So that's pretty much the website. You can go and explore it. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer about the website. If not, I'll continue on to some of the other things that we're working on. We just launched our little book of big experience. That is something that we've done for 2 other years in the past. We revamped it so it's more condensed. And basically, it's providing experiences for people to come to St. Helena. This year, we included spa experiences. There's dining, wine, and lodging. The main reason we do that is really to help our hotels during the slow season. That's where we see the most success in that program. That program helps our hotels take a product that we've produced for them and market it when they're basically selling their rooms to try to get people to want to stay because they're going to get this free Napa Valley wine passport. So we do really well selling that again to the hotels at a very inexpensive wholesale cost, and then they can use that for marketing. And then we also sell it to visitors in the Welcome Center as well as online, and we do pretty well with that as well. As far as our social media, I want to get to that because this is something I'm really proud of that we've been working incredibly hard on is the social media for the city of St. Helena. So when I first started, we had about 4,300 followers. At the beginning of this year, we had about 5,500. Around July, it was roughly like 5,800. And when the new fiscal year rolled around, we beefed up our social media. That is where my focus really has been because social media is everything in marketing. And our goal was to reach 10,000 followers by November, and we surpassed that goal. We reached 10,000 followers on October 16th, which was amazing. And some of the tactics that we're doing is we're bringing influencers in. We've paid to bring influencers in, and we're also bringing them in, teaming up with some of our chamber partners where maybe we don't pay, but they get a free hotel night stay or something like that. So we've brought in a total of about 5 influencers that have come in, and we do strategic postings. We've done giveaways with those influencers. We also did a social media meetup where we brought in an influencer that had a following base of about 750,000 followers. And we did somewhat of a meetup on Main Street where people shopped on Main Street. So that was something that we did. But if you look at our social media growth on the document that I provided, just to give you an example, October of last year, we got 153 monthly likes. In October of this year, we had 3,880 likes. So that is an amazing improvement. And right now we're at 10,700 followers. And a great example is with Jingle All the Way, actually. On Friday morning at 7:30 in the morning, I launched a giveaway on our social media. We had 10,500 followers at that moment, Friday, 7:30 a.m. We did a giveaway with an influencer who came here. She stayed at a hotel with her family and kids, basically did Jingle All the Way. We had a strategic number of posts, hashtags that needed to be used, certain people needed to be tagged, etc. And we are now at 10,700 followers. So we gained 200 followers. And I had that at the end of Friday, so literally in less than 24 hours. So that was amazing. So that was very exciting. If you look at our Facebook fan growth, you can see our numbers. So not only Instagram, but Facebook and Twitter. And I'll just go through some of them briefly. So in November of 2017, our Facebook fan growth was about 25,089, which is a pretty good number. But in November of 2018, our Facebook fan growth is now 39,484. So that is on a monthly basis, which is amazing. Our posts have dramatically increased as well. Last year in November, we did 16 posts. Now we're up to about 41 a month, and that's not including live videos or Insta stories, if you know what those are. But because those are just done on we just kind of do those strategically with our content calendar. Our Twitter fan growth is also up as well. And I could probably talk forever about social media because I love it. So I'll move on to events that we've been working on for the chamber. We've been doing a number of events and bringing back things. So we've brought back our workshops. We did a social media workshop that wasn't just for our members, it was for anybody. They could attend. We are just about to do our Celebrate St. Helena and announce those winners for this year. That will happen next week. Our summer concert series, of course, St. Helena Jingle All the Way has been probably the biggest project I've been working on so far. I think we started our meetings in January. It was pretty amazing to see the ice skating rink come to life with the help of the city and the chamber and some community members. We launched, of course, Santa at the Chamber, the gift wrapping with the Boys and Girls Club. We're continuing to do our mixers on a regular basis, the sidewalk sale, and a new event that we are hoping to do next year called the Neighborhood Table, which you'll hear about a little bit later. So those are, I know I've been rambling, but those are a lot of the things that the Chamber has been working on and really focusing on our businesses, our members, and of course the community of St. Helena, and really promoting the city. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for members of the council? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item up is the Elm Tunnel update. Mr. Uribe.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to do a quick presentation to update everyone on the tunnel and what's going on with Elms. So, as requested, we have executed a contract now to get an outside consultant through Hort Science. It's called Hort Science, and it's a division of Bartlett Company. And I don't know if everyone's heard, it's a very big company, and they range from regular pruning to this type of stuff, which is more on the as far as arborists, is consulting arborists. And how we got to this company was we reached out to Sacramento, who has a program called STEP. It's called Save the Elms Program, and they kind of do a volunteer system where they teach volunteers from the community to go out, and they'll give them about 4 or 5 trees, and they're in charge of going out and giving like visual updates and anything they notice is going wrong with a tree. They get together, they give the information to the consultants, and then they go out and try to treat them as needed. So that's where we came up with the company. So in the next couple of weeks, we'll start to provide them information, particularly our what we have in place, our elm tree management plan, which was back from 2011, and I'll give you a little bit of what I asked them in our scope. So we want them to do an assessment of the 90 mature trees that we have. The assessment includes like a visual inspection of the tree, a measurement of the tree, and they'll give you a grading on a scale of 1 to 5. They'll give you a structural and health assessment of it. They'll also do some risk assessment as far as more than a visual. They'll go. It's called secondary and tertiary inspections, where sometimes it's more of sound, or they'll take samples depending on what they see. And then they're also going to map everything for us and color code everything for us on GIS and tag them. And then the other thing is we want them to assess our current program. So they're going to assess our plan and seeing, are our inoculations the way that they're scheduled? We're using the right stuff. Are we pruning? Are we watering correctly? And so that's kind of what we're going to work with them. We're going to they'll provide us with a report, and then we'll make corrective actions as needed. Other stuff that's happened out there. So as you know, we planted some elms earlier on in this year. Out of those, only 2 have not taken that we've seen. So we're going to plan on replanting those in the upcoming weeks. That being said, I did meet with Caltrans at the beginning of November to go over any possible removals. And so right now there's slated to be 2 on the east side. And that's just because of so much dieback that they have in decay that for potential hazard, those are the 2 that will be removed this year, along with some pruning of some dead wood that we've saw on 6 trees throughout that section. And it's kind of from, I would say, the entrance, that first row. I know it by what I go by. It's called the Hermanos entrance. It's probably 20 trees down on the Behringer side. From there towards the to the north is where you're starting to see more of the dieback. So there's about 6 that have a lot. Where I'm talking stuff that's almost 8 and above diameter branches that need to cut back to something that's green. So that's just so it doesn't fall on anyone. We also have, let's see, so let me give you a schedule on that. So that's slated to happen at the end of February. Right now, that's just the window they have, end of February, beginning of March. In January, when they got their schedules figured out a little bit more, we'll have a 2 to 3 day window of when they're going to be doing that. That's what they're approximating that job will take. And of course, that allow us to give out nixles, get plenty of notice for everyone to be aware of traffic in that area. Let's see. So again, we're going to be replanting 2 of the ones that didn't take, plus these 2 that failed, and we have those trees in our mini arboretum in our courtyard. So we kind of stage trees there, keep them going on the irrigation system, so that as trees go, we have them readily available, and we get to plant them a lot quicker. As far as inoculations go, so our last inoculation of merit was in 2018. In August, we did our shepherd inoculation. And I'm working right now with Caltrans to acquire the merit for the next inoculation, which will happen probably around the same time. We're looking at, finally, we're getting winter, which is what we're looking for stuff to get dormant. And that's when you do that application. So we're looking at probably end of January, beginning of February to do that. So on schedule as last year. And I think that's it, unless you guys have any questions for me.
Any questions of Mr. Uribe? No? Thank you very much. Good report. Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Welcome.
All right. Next we have the consent calendar. And again, let me know if any member of the public wishes to remove any item from the consent calendar. My understanding is the city manager wishes to remove 8.4 from the consent calendar. So at this point, the chair would entertain a motion to approve 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, 8.5, 8.6, 8.7, and 8.8. You want to pull 8.7, okay? So, let me restate the motion. At this point, the chair would entertain a motion to approve 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, 8.5, 8.6, and 8.8.
So moved.
Is there a second? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Doring?
Yes.
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Councilmember Ellsworth?
Yes.
Coverstein?
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to announce that there are 3 vacant seats up here in the front if folks in the back want to sit down.
Yeah, please feel free to come forward. So let me turn back to 8.4.
Thank you, Mayor. This is typically an item that we find on our discussion calendar, and this is really the bookend of a full year of our work plan. And given the fact that this council set in motion this work plan, I wanted to be sure that we had an opportunity to talk about it, but also to acknowledge the work that was done over the past 12 months. So I'll stop there and happy to answer any questions you have.
All right. Any further questions? Any questions from the public? I can open the public hearing. It's 8.4. All right.
Hi, my name is Bobby Monette. I'm speaking as a citizen. And yes, thank you for all the work. I had some questions, though. On number 5, it talks about landscape, community support plan funding strategy to renovate Lyman Park. I was just wondering, and I don't have a preference one way or the other, but I was wondering if the unofficial decision made a year or so ago to honor the Lyman family's desire not to substantially change Lyman Park while rebuilding City Hall, if that's still part of our political memory about this. There have been many suggestions, specifically by Scope, about how to improve Lyman Park since the family has spoken out in favor of making no changes. I'm wondering if we're going to honor past commitment. It was unofficial, but to respect their request that if we were not to change anything in Lyman Park. So that was one question. On number 12, I was wondering, that has to do with the large water users. Is there going to be more done, and when will it be revisited? Or is that just, I just may be ignorant of the plan. That might be automatically explained somewhere, not in the staff report. On number 13, the same question. That was about the rate tiers. What more will be done there, and when will it be revisited? And then number 15, I should know, but I wasn't clear what intersections were being talked about. I think I maybe know at this point, but I wasn't sure. So I was just wondering about that. So those are my questions. I don't know if I should.
You want to undertake a response?
Sure, I can walk through each of those briefly. With respect to Lyman Park, because of the work of the SHAPE Committee, the discussions about developing a community-supported plan and funding strategy to renovate Lyman Park have been postponed until a clearer vision is had related to the type of building that would replace City Hall on that site. So we have had an initial conversation with a member of the Lyman family, and it'll be important that we continue the dialogue with representatives of that family as we move forward.
Yeah.
With respect to discussions on issues related to rate tiers and surcharges to improve rate equity among water users, the city has hired an engineer to evaluate the science and methodology related to the city's ability to support different rates, and that work is underway now. And we'll have a report probably in about 2 months, I would think, related to that we'll bring forward to the council. In terms of intersections, we recently awarded a contract to Riker Spence, amended a contract to them to help work on a scope of work. We're essentially evaluating alternatives related to the Pratt Main Street intersection there. And again, we probably need about a month or two, maybe a little longer, Okay, so a nod, let me guess, 3 to 6 months. So that will be forthcoming, but that's work that we'll need to coordinate with Caltrans. And I think I covered all 4. Is that right?
All right. With respect.
I just wonder, is the consultant being hired, is he going to be doing number 13 too? He's going to be addressing the tiers, water tiers, number 13, as well as number 12.
Oh, number 12 is really a work that we've started in-house, and I overlooked that one. So on the water, it's conversations that we've had with representatives of the council, Councilmember Ellsworth, Councilmember Doring, and that work was essentially paused a bit by myself because of the other work that was occurring within the city, namely a lot of time being invested in the SHAPE process. And so we imagine revisiting this soon, partly because of some of the ideas that have come out of initial discussions, but also because the general plan will require us to do additional work in this same space.
Okay. So with respect to anything further with respect to 8.4? I think the only action there was to receive and file. So I don't think we need a vote on it. And then 8.7, Ms. Manette, you pulled that. This relates to a resolution approving temporary closure of Adams Street and authorizing possession of open alcoholic beverages on those streets for the 2019 inaugural neighborhood community table event scheduled for May 11th, 2019. This is looking ahead quite a ways. Yeah, you asked it be pulled, so why don't you express your concern?
Yes, thanks. Well, first of all, I'm not against this project at all in any way, except that I was a little concerned. I think I'm going to assume that the people who made this ordinance in the first place were motivated by a sense of public safety. I don't know, but it's my assumption that when the city council is given the prerogative to allow a law to be broken or overridden, that the expectation is that it would only be done in case of an emergency. Rule by law is our system, and to my way of thinking, the best one available, even though it is flawed. And I think it's really important not to undermine this system by waiving a law for frivolous, less than serious reasons. I think that the possibility of having more fun at a party is not a good reason to waive a law. If the law doesn't reflect the will of the community, then we need to change the law and not randomly and arbitrarily waive it. I'm not against changing the law. I just think this is not a good process. In terms of what St. Helena says about itself as a city with this waiver, I ask, what is the mega message here going out to our children, our teens, our citizens, and our visitors? One might be that it's okay to override laws in order to party and have a good time. The executive function of the city is the city council, which is being asked to do just that, call off the law and the law enforcers for a good time. The executive function part of the brains of our teenagers and adults may make that very decision more times than we might want to think, sometimes with tragic unintended consequences. Another mega message is that it's not a good party unless there's alcohol available, and is that really true for us? It might be. Can we really not have a good time without alcohol? I had there some research about teens and alcohol and modeling, community modeling as well as individual modeling. And it turns out that, a critical time for teens to have good models in the community is teenagers. Kids under 12 are not as affected by adult drinking or community drinking as teens. Adult attitudes do influence kids. Several interesting studies indicate that if adults are around them, that are around kids, are resistant to drinking and drug use, that teens are less likely to use them, and that stands as a buffer. The societal abstinence stands as a buffer against peer pressure to use alcohol and other drugs. And a lot of times the reasons that adolescents use, say, for drinking is to, be able to socialize easier. And they do that without focusing on the risks. Behavior does not occur in a vacuum and cannot be understood adequately without considering the interplay between the individual and the environment. And this is an effort to reduce the influence of peer pressure has been to teach and encourage drinking refusal self-efficacy. And if you can say that sober, fast, 3 times in a row, I would be amazed. This concept refers to one's ability to resist social pressure to use alcohol, in particular social situations. So with these research results in mind and the questions about the process of law, I'm asking you, our city council, to consider that we as a community will model drinking refusal self-efficacy for our children, especially our teens, for those adults in our community who are in recovery, and for everyone else, in the name of healthy, clean, and sober connection, the kind we all want for our children. By denying this request, I would like to adopt a policy that community social events, especially those associated with health and building interpersonal relationships, will not include alcohol and other legal recreational drug use on our public streets. And the public streets are the only things I'm concerned about, including, in addition to alcohol, all nicotine and cannabis products. So, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you very much. Is there any further council? Let me open it up to any further public comment. Let me open it up to council discussion. This is an event that's being sponsored, as I understand it, by Nimbus Arts and the Chamber of Commerce. To my way of thinking, it's no different from what we do at the Harvest Festival. Am I missing something here, Mr. Prestwich?
No, it's similar to the same process and approval that was used for that event, as well as, I believe, Home for the Holidays in terms of a street closure.
Is there any further council discussion with respect to it?
I'll speak after Marcus.
I am Marcus Marquez, resident of St. Helena. I wasn't prepared to speak, so I'm kind of going off the cuff and speaking of the harvest table in Calistoga, but we do have our harvest fair where there is controlled beer that is sold and wine during the pet parade and everything else. So I think as a community, we have shown responsibility to do these type of events or parties. And also, what a better way to get to know your neighbors from a giant community table where our restaurants are more of an intimate social gathering, where this is a community thing. So I just feel that as a council and as a city, you guys have a lot of examples of where it does work, and it's responsible activities that will be in a public setting. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? I'll close public comment. Is there any council discussion? Mr. Ellsworth?
Excuse me. Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I think Ms. Monette makes some good points. If this is the kind of thing we start approving every week, it's something to start looking at. I think what we're looking at right now are sort of events that are separated. We did the community potluck, the harvest festival, where we close areas off and have established areas. So I'm certainly in favor of moving forward with this, but I do think that Ms. Monette brings up some good points that maybe can be part of a further discussion as we move into the new year and talk about how we move forward on events and projects like that.
Any other council discussion? At this point, the chair would entertain a motion to approve 8.7.
So moved.
I'll second it. Please, roll call.
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes.
Councilmember Doring?
Yes.
Koberstein?
Yes.
Ellsworth?
Yes.
Next item is public hearings. Mercifully, we have none. Next item is new business, 10.1, recognition of outgoing Mayor Alan Galbraith and Vice Mayor Peter White. And I'll turn that over to the city manager.
And the city manager is going to turn it over, I believe, to Councilmember Koberstein.
You're here.
All right.
You know I like to talk, and I usually like to talk first, so here goes. We're going to start out with a little trip down memory lane.
Oh, no.
All in good humor. So in preparation for tonight's send-off, Paul and Jeff and I, we wanted to get together and reminisce about the work of this city council over the last 2 years. It did cross our mind that a meeting like this might be a violation of the Brown Act. We didn't want to be found out, so we began to search for a secure location. Our first thought was to go to the north end of town to the CIA.
Okay.
Appropriate.
Given the season, we thought those dorms might be empty. The students might not be in session, and it would be quiet. We thought it might be a good idea to ride up there on bicycles. If we traveled by bike, possibly no one would even notice we made the trip. But we realized rather quickly that if anybody saw the three of us and recognized us, in culinary terms, our goose would be cooked. So we thought the better that choice, we decided to look elsewhere. Jeff suggested we drive separately and that we meet and park in the Adventist church parking lot. From there, we could walk over to Los Alcabas for a drink with Ganit at Acacia House. If the bar wasn't open, maybe we could cross that new design-approved pedestrian bridge and head over to Behringer for a tasting. Behringer had recently been advertising their 97-point cab. Big time. Big cab. But it was getting dark, and none of us could remember if the council permitted lights on that bridge. Plus, leaving our cars in the Adventist church lot was problematic because none of us wanted to do anything to interfere with that employee parking arrangement. So our thoughts turned to other places. Those scores of shiny, new, smaller, design-approved tanks over at Behringer, We thought they might offer us some good cover. But it crossed our minds that Anthony McKelly might be watching or possibly filming the traffic going in and out from Pratt to Behringer. And we didn't want to get caught up in the surveillance. So our search continued. Then Paul hit on a great idea. He suggested that we head over to the York Creek Dam. The three of us had recently dropped some significant cash over there, and we thought it would be a safe place. But it might require us to cross a red line to get there. It was getting dark. Besides that, Tom Belt might be out counting fish. We didn't want to put him in a position of also having to count council members. 1, 2, 3, oh my. McCorkle was definitely out. A secret camera had already captured one of us over there after that design review appeal. And besides, if we were trapped, we knew there's only one way out of that street. We weren't far from Vineyard Valley. We have friends there on both sides of the RSO. But all three of us recognize that what Vineyard Valley needs now is some time and space to heal itself. So we decided it would be best if we went elsewhere. We headed back downtown thinking that a wine tasting room might be just what we needed. But we weren't sure of the hour or the distance of the room in relation to nearby public and private schools. And Paul is sometimes known to prefer a Manhattan. So we opted for another location. We settled on Anna's Cantina.
Ooh-wee.
We thought Anna was most likely very happy with the 2017 revised water rates, and particularly her wastewater bill. And even if she did recognize us, she might keep our secret. So we seated ourselves at Anna's, went up to the bar and ordered a drink. We sat down, and the first thing we decided to do was take a straw poll to see if we really wanted to discuss a roast for Peter and Alan. Our first vote was 3-2, which didn't seem right.
Those were my straws.
We ordered another drink, and we took another vote, and it was 3-0. So here we are. So in reality, over the past 2 years, this council has worked together on many issues. We also lodged many 3-2 votes, some of which I might have just talked about. Not always in predictable combinations. It came in various combinations of the five of us. And although our opinions sometimes differed, I don't think we questioned the sincerity of each other's point of view. And we knew that each of us voted to do what we thought was best for St. Helena. And through it all, our sense of collegiality held. So now, as you both move on to new ventures with more free time at your disposal, we wish you well. While we were at Anna's, we dreamed up a couple of gifts from the three of us. I want to begin with Alan, who, as our mayor, efficiently ran all of our city council meetings. Through public comment, during regular meetings and appeals, we know that you did your best to keep our discussion on topic and your eye on the time clock. And so tonight, if you would pass this down, we want to present you with your own personal brass 3-minute sand timer.
It will have to be modified to 4 minutes.
You know, unfortunately, the sand timer people have not caught up with our new rules. And for Peter.
Oh, I got a bigger bag than you do.
We want to recognize your multifaceted experience, your deep institutional knowledge, and your efforts to secure funding for our downtown sidewalk project. You have quietly helped to keep us on the right path, and for that, we wish to present you with this authentic, historic piece of St. Helena.
Is this like the Berlin Wall?
Oh, wow.
That is a paper. I think I've tripped over this one.
Thank you very much.
Good wishes.
I understand the Vice Mayor has a couple of remarks, and then I have a couple of remarks too, and that will conclude where we are before the council takes a recess.
And I might want to say a few words too.
Oh,
just, yeah.
All right. Go
May
ahead.
I say my few words now?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to thank you both for your service to the community, for your graciousness to me, especially sitting here 4 years. I'll say a few words about both of you. We've sat here together as seatmates for 4 years, and we've developed such a relationship, a meaningful relationship that I will forever cherish. We rarely talked about politics. We used our humor. We talked about many other things. The thing that we have in common, which I have a deep affinity and respect for you, is our faith and our family and our friends, the things that we're most dedicated to you. And that is what has connected us together. And so this relationships are always what is on the top of my mind. And my relationship with you, I will cherish forever. And I thank you for your service, your steadfastness, and your quiet leadership for our community. I very much appreciate it. And thank you for your friendship.
Thank you.
And with Alan, I've also had a very meaningful relationship over the last 4 years, starting with our campaign together. We've had so many opportunities outside the city council to develop such a very strong and meaningful relationship. The many lunches that we've had, where we've talked about many other things beside politics, although we talked a lot about how best to govern this community. We've shared ideas. I greatly appreciate the gift of your brilliance, your dedication to detail, the power of the written word, the fact that there were many times I knew that you wanted to gavel me out of order, and you resisted. And you have this is your last chance, by the way, Mayor, to gavel me out of order if you want.
Not a prayer.
But we've developed a very meaningful relationship, which I will also cherish, and I look forward to those many lunches in the future in Calistoga.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I think we're at. Do you have something to say?
I would just like to thank both you and Peter for what I've learned from you both about the details of the city and city administration. And I would hope and ask that you remain participants in the city, and that we can, the things that you know and have learned can continue to be passed on to others who serve. So I just want to thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mayor Galbraith, Senator Dodd asked me to be here tonight in his place to present you with a resolution for your service to the city. We thank you so much for all of your accomplishments.
And Mayor, I'm going to invite you and the Vice Mayor to the podium, and then I think we may have others that would like to say a few words in the form of public comment.
Can I make a comment?
Sure, before we head over.
So anyway, I would like to begin by thanking the citizens of St. Helena for this opportunity, privilege, and honor to serve our community for nearly 10 years. It wasn't always easy, but it truly was an honor to serve as your elected representative. I would like to thank our late mayor and mentor, my mentor, Del Britton, who appointed me to the Planning Commission, then subsequently convinced me to run for office. If he hadn't insisted that I quit complaining and get involved, I would never have experienced the joy and sometimes heartache of being a civic leader, but it was mostly joyous. Next, I would like to recognize my colleagues that I worked with over the years, On the Planning Commission, I served with Peter McCrae, Reuben Katz, Sandy Erickson, and my good friend Alan Galbraith. And on the council, this is a long list. Del Britton, Ann Navarro, Sharon Kroll, Katerina Sanchez, Greg Pitts, Mario Scolati, and most recently, Alan, Paul, Mary, and Jeff. It's been a privilege and an honor to serve with you all, especially Alan, whom I served the last 4 years as his vice mayor and close friend. I would like to next thank all our city staff, my second family. I knew I'd have a hard time. It has been quite a journey over the years. 5 city managers, 3 planning directors, 3 public works directors, 3 finance directors, but only 2 city clerks. Takes a long time to achieve perfection, but I think the city is there with the best staff ever. And finally, I would like to thank my replacement, Anna Chouteau, for stepping up. I wish Anna, our city council, and the staff all the best for the years to come. So thank you.
Thank you. What is our procedure? I have a statement too, but I would like to read it last.
Okay. I would like to invite you to the podium, perhaps also to open it up for public comment and then maybe closing words.
Okay.
Is this the city roast now?
So the mayor is always very good at moving this podium. I'm going to try it myself. Here we
Lots
go.
of practice reading proclamations over the
How's
years.
this? So, Mayor, we have a couple of gifts for you and the Vice Mayor. But first, I want to tell you a little math I was doing recently. So, looking at these plaques, these 2 gentlemen have served this community for 17 years between the 2 of them. So 9 years with Peter, 8 years with Alan. And that's a lot of meetings. And so I started to do some math, and I thought, well, how long is an average council meeting? It's about 2 hours, right? But then I realized this is St. Helena. Perhaps it's maybe a little longer, maybe 3 hours. We've had one 5-hour meeting during the year and a half I've been here. But collectively, adding up some of these hours that you've spent in service to the community, I easily eclipsed 1,000 hours just in meetings alone. And we know that you do a lot of prep work before meetings. You spend time in the community representing the city. And we're very grateful to have your service over these 17 years, collective 17 years. So with that, we have a very small gift in recognition of your service, and I want to read this and present them, one to you and also to the Vice Mayor. Presented to Alan Galbraith, in appreciation of your dedication, leadership, and lasting contribution to the City of St. Helena. Planning Commission Service 2009 to 2013, Mayor 2014 to 2018. I believe the city clerk will be asking for the codes to City Hall from the 2 of them after the meeting.
That's the toughest thing.
And to Peter White, presented to you in appreciation of your outstanding service, dedication, and lasting contribution to the City of St. Helena. Planning Commission 2009 to 2010, Council Member 2010 to 2014, Vice Mayor 2014 to 2018.
Let me go back and see if there's public comment. So, is there any further public comment? Seeing none, let me then provide my final remarks, which are fairly short. As I said in my concession statement, I wish the new mayor, the council, the city, well, as they face the many challenges ahead, including dealing with ancient infrastructure that seems continuously to present unwanted surprises. We heard about one of them this evening. I now look forward to observing city affairs from the sidelines. I especially want to thank again our dedicated city employees, and especially the public safety and field employees. They are there for us every day. The city certainly benefited from 3 talented city managers during my 4 years as mayor: Jennifer Phillips, Larry Pennell, and now Mark Prestwish. I've appreciated the advice of our city attorney, Tom Brown. We are also most fortunate in our dedicated and resourceful senior staff and middle managers too. I thank each of you as well. Finally, Vice Mayor Peter White deserves a special shout out. We joined city government, as you've heard, as planning commissioners at the same time in July 2009. He is an exceptional public servant. I am especially going to miss working with him. It has been a great privilege to be of service to the city of St. Helena. Thank you.
Good night. Good night. Let's see. How are we going to do this?
We are going to take a 5-minute break and then reconvene the meeting.
Can I leave this with you? Take that? Since my hands are full of the other things here. There's blood on it from stepping. I don't think there's anything in it. Oh, here, I want this. Oh, yeah. Sure. And I'm going to let you take this back. And just throw out the papers that are in there.
Excuse me. Hello, if everyone could take their seats, please. If everyone could please take your seat. Sure. Go ahead, whistle. Pat. Pat.
Want me to clap my hands?
Please take your seats. We are reconvening the meeting. Please take your seats.
Like that, Cindy?
Okay, we're now reconvened, and we are going to move on to item 10.2, and we're going to administer the oath of office. First, I'd like to call up Mayor-elect Jeff Ellsworth. If you could please and raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Jeff Ellsworth,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will
that I will
bear true faith
bear true faith
and allegiance
and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will
and that I will
well and faithfully
well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Come over here. If you could raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Anna Shuto,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will
that I will
bear true faith
bear true faith
and allegiance
and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any
or purpose of evasion,
purpose of evasion,
that I will
that I will
well and faithfully
well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Raise your right hand, please.
Yes, ma'am.
I state your name.
I, Paul Jameson Doring,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will
that I will
bear true faith
bear true faith
and allegiance
and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion
or purpose
of evasion,
of evasion,
and that I will
and that I will
well and faithfully
well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Now this brings us to item 10.3. And Mayor Ellsworth, if you'll please take your seat. Mayor Ellsworth, you're going to discuss the seating arrangement.
So we're going to move to item 10.3. As we are going to be seated, I would like the council members to choose their own seats. I think by seniority might be a good way to approach it. That would be Mr. Doring would be the first to make his choice of what seat he would like.
Subject to change.
Yeah, he's going to stay in familiar territory. And then Miss Koberstein would be next in order of...
I wanted that seat.
Well, maybe there's some...
Is he moving?
No.
There's 3 other excellent seats available.
I want to sit here so I can see people on that side of the podium who I haven't been able to see.
Okay, that's great, yeah. Ms. Chateau, there are 2 available seats, whichever your choice is. And so now we're going to move to 10.4. I have a statement. I was wondering if Anna might have a statement. Is there a time to read that? What would you?
10.3.
Okay, so now is the time for that?
Sure.
Okay. Do you have some comments or a statement you'd like to?
I just want to say thank you. My family's here. My kids are here. Matt's here. My dad, my mom, my uncle, longtime friends that have known me forever, friends from the last year, friends I've known since I first moved here, friends that I've met since doing the city council journey. They're all here to support me tonight, and it means everything to me to have done this with you here witnessing. So thank you. Thank you to the city council for being so welcoming to me. Peter's words, I really took to my heart. I could feel it. And every one of you has welcomed me in your own way, and it's been wonderful. Same with the city staff. So thank you, and I'm really excited about this.
Well, thank you. We're glad to have you here. I have a statement. It's a little longer, and I apologize. I hope you'll bear with me. It's not too long, but there were just some things I wanted to say. I wanted to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank my mom and my friends and everybody that supported me or didn't support me. You know, we're a community, and hopefully we work well together forward from here. I want to thank the staff. I want to thank the council members, and welcome Anna. I've noticed recently more and more hearing the word "sir" when people speak to me, and I don't like that. My name is Jeff, and I'm comfortable with that. I'm here to work and work together as a team with the community and the staff. So I just want to put that out there in the beginning. Jeff is an excellent way to address me. I want to recognize that St. Helena had an 80% turnout of registered voters in this election, which is remarkably high. And something we should all be very proud of. It's a testament to the level of engagement in our democratic process here, and hopefully an example that can be carried forth for the young people in this community to see and participate in such a great voter turnout is something I hope they can take forward as a precedent for the future of something that inspires hope for democracy, and to share that message of engagement wherever their lives take them. This kind of turnout doesn't occur everywhere, and I hope that they will take this and push that forward in other places as well. I realize it was a close election for mayor here, and I want to respect that. I believe that we all have many of the same objectives. I'm sure we will continue to disagree on issues, but through dialogue and open communication and a willingness to listen to each other, we should be able to come closer to consensus. One statement I've read regarding the purpose of governance is that it should exist to support the will of the majority while ensuring the rights of the minority. So I want to be sensitive to everybody's input. We're very lucky in St. Helena. We have tremendous resources and assets, most importantly, our people. People that have been here a long time, people that are newly arrived, and everyone in between. And we're all very different and unique, but I believe that we're all here for a reason, in the same place, at the same time. And I think we can do extraordinary things together. It's kind of like the Starship Enterprise embarking on a voyage. Let's look around us and appreciate our crew members, which is all of us, the community and everybody up here, the staff and the council. When I was growing up here, going to school at the RLS Junior High, there was a mural that read, "Wherever I may roam, St. Helena is my home." And it seemed a little hokey to all of us at the time, but it has always stuck with me, and through all my travels through all 50 states, I found it to be true. To me, this is the greatest town in the world, and it's worth all of our attention and energy to prepare the town to be its best for the decades and generations to come. The amazing things we have experienced here should be experienced by future generations. There's a reason that St. Helena and Napa Valley don't look like the Silicon Valley or the San Fernando Valley. Not that there's anything wrong with those places. I've been there and they offer something, but it's different than what we have here. This is a very unique place. Forward-thinking people in the late 1960s and early 1970s implemented ideas here like the agricultural preserve in the county and policies in St. Helena to take things in a different direction than those other areas like the Silicon Valley and San Fernando Valley that are now formerly agricultural areas. We still are an agricultural area, and we're a world-renowned agricultural area with a remarkable sophistication and a remarkable down-to-earth quality at the same time. It took a different kind of nuanced thinking to create this place, and it will take a different kind of nuanced thinking to sustain it. But we can do it. It can be frustrating, it can be challenging because we have so many different perspectives, but because we're all here for a reason, and because we all love this place, we can do it together. We need to move forward and evolve, but we need to remember what it was that allowed this place to exist in the first place. I think we can seamlessly continue the work we've been doing over the last few years on the council, and with an excellent staff and engaged community, strengthening our financial and water policies, moving forward on a serious housing strategy, moving forward on downtown revitalization, moving forward on long-needed infrastructure upgrades like sidewalks and city hall, library needs, recreation department needs, police department needs, public works needs, fire department needs, and anybody else I've missed. Moving forward with all the components that make and keep a town safe and livable, and all the things that keep a town wonderful as well. So that includes holiday tree lightings, skating rinks, community potlucks, music, art, square dances, Cinco de Mayo celebrations, harvest festivals, keeping a good roof on the Native Sons Hall, and whatever else we can think of that can help us come together and stay together as a full community. I also want to present the ideas of reinstating the Multicultural Committee, of creating a youth committee, of creating more outreach to our senior community so that all of our voices are heard. We also need an engaged dialogue with the county to make sure our best interests are understood there. And while aspects like wine and food and bocce are critical elements of what make this place incredible, let's not forget freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of religion, and the full exercise of the democratic process. These are the real foundations of this town and country that allowed all else to follow. In San Francisco Magazine's 2018 list of the top 101 cities in the Bay Area, St. Helena is listed as number 8 out of 101, higher than any other city or town in Napa or Sonoma County. That's pretty remarkable. And yes, we have challenges, like all cities, but because we're small and because we have incredible resources and community, incredible resources and community, and because we can actually talk to each other, we have a much better chance of overcoming these challenges. St. Francis of Assisi said, "Start by doing what is necessary, then do what's possible, and suddenly you are doing the impossible." I'll finish with another quote that I got off of a box of tea, where many great quotes come from. It's a Buddhist proverb that says, "If we are facing in the right direction, all we have to do is keep walking." I believe our collective efforts over the last few years have kept us oriented in the right direction for a magnificent future for many generations to come. We just need to step forward together. Thank you. Okay, so shall we move on to 10.4. Item 10.4 is the consideration of the vice mayor nomination made by the mayor and requiring council approval. Tom, do you have
I actually hadn't known that I was going to take that one. I'm happy to.
Oh, okay.
I was looking at the wrong item. This is your show, Mayor.
Oh, okay. Well, so I will make a nomination. My choice for vice mayor is Mr. Doring, if he would accept that nomination.
Yes, I would accept that nomination. Thank you.
And so would then I make a motion and would require a second?
That nomination would be deemed your motion, so it would call for any member of the council to second it.
Second.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes.
Councilmember Koberstein.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring.
Yes.
Councilor Shuto. Yes.
Can we switch?
Okay.
My chair.
Gonna switch the signs.
Okay, so then we'll move to item 10.5. And this will be a discussion about filling the vacant seat. And I will make just a comment now about, I think from the items from now on, we're past the point of applause. I think for the previous items, applause was a good thing, but as we move into these next items, it's more business. So applause should be held if the feeling comes up. This is a discussion about how we want to fill this vacant seat. And there are two options. One is by appointment, and the other is by special election. And what my feeling is I would like to hear from each of the council members their thoughts, or if the city manager has any, or city attorney has any input.
I was going to summarize very briefly the staff report, which essentially says that upon taking the oath this evening, former council member Ellsworth, now Mayor Ellsworth, created a vacancy in his council seat. That vacancy must be filled both under the municipal code and the parallel provision under state law. There's a bit of a deadline on that. Both in terms of the decision whether the council will fill the vacancy by calling a special election or will fill it by appointment. You have 60 days under state law, which I've said in the staff report is the deadline that will apply to you. Your municipal code establishes a shorter period, and I've stated that I believe that state law will control. In addition, if the council does choose to proceed with a special election to fill the vacancy, you also will have a deadline. There is a deadline for calling that election, and that would be something that you would do. So, and that's a 114-day period. So I think that this evening, the first question for the council would be whether you want to give direction to staff with respect to a decision to either appoint or fill the vacancy by calling a special election.
My thought would be to hear from the council members, open it up to the public, and then come back to the council. Does anybody have any, Anna?
So, from my understanding, it costs anywhere between $10,000 to $30,000 to do the special election, depending on how the votes are count. So, I was leaning towards doing the appointment, thinking that that would be a good idea because of the cost and the time. Since we wouldn't be able to do it until May or June, that means then that the person would have a year and a half before they'd have to run for election, and that seems like not a lot of time to get up and running before doing that.
Thank you.
I think we have a lot of work on our plate. We have a real full agenda of goals and objectives, and to wait for the election and then to be certified. We know how long that takes. Whoever came on the council we'd be 4 or 5 months worth of work already in, and I think it's all important work, and it's really better to bring somebody in sooner. And for that reason, I would favor the appointment process myself.
Keep it short and sweet. I agree with my colleagues' cogent comments.
Thank you. Is there any, I'll open the public comment. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public comment. And are there any more comments? I'll make my, I tend to agree. Is there any more discussion?
Well, I think if the consensus is appointment, it might be good for us to talk a little bit about that process and what we'd like the city manager or staff to do to assist us in moving it along.
One of the thoughts, I believe, was to create a working group of 2 council members that would do a little bit of research about the process of an appointment, how what the criteria would be, what the sort of time frame, and then perhaps working with staff and then present that as soon as possible. And that may be, had we discussed a special meeting for something like that?
A special meeting is possible. I think it would be helpful for us to understand if we're looking at a traditional recruitment process where we are simply looking for applications, or whether you have other questions you would like to ask in the form of a supplemental questionnaire with the application process. In terms of timing and glancing at the agenda, or I'm sorry, at the calendar, I anticipate that we can fast track a recruitment process and be ready to appoint by January 8th. The fallback would be January 22nd, but I think certainly by the 22nd we could complete a recruitment process. It just depends on how much time you want to make available.
I do think it's important that the public be aware and have the opportunity to submit and understand what the criteria would be. Any thoughts on moving?
You know, in early January or mid-January, we probably go through our goal-setting process, and we usually have some kind of team-building meeting. So I'm not trying to rush this along, but whoever this person is should really be a part of that. I wouldn't want to go ahead without having the 5th person here. So, you know, I'm in favor of moving expeditiously, but I recognize it's holiday season as well. And I'm okay with the application form we have, maybe a little more elaboration on why this person is particularly interested, you know, what they feel they would bring to the group. I'm not looking for a clone to come up here. I would like to see people apply who bring something that we don't currently have among us. We have enough lawyers. Not that a lawyer shouldn't apply, but another voice, you know, would be a good thing.
So in terms of next steps, is it getting a working group of perhaps 2 council members to lay out exactly what the application is, what it would look like, and then making the public announcement? If we're going to try to move something by the 8th, or the 22nd, that's not a lot of time for the public to become aware. I just want to make sure people feel that they've had enough time to digest it. Shall I open the public comment period to get some input from the public? Okay, I won't.
So, Mayor, I'm looking at the calendar, and we have the ability to open up an application process now and make that, by the end of the week, we would be able to open the application process and notify the community and in a variety of ways of the opportunity to submit an application. Looking at the calendar, if we set the application deadline for, say, the 3rd or 4th of January, you could you could make a decision on the 8th, or we could alternatively schedule a special meeting for interviews at a different time. And that could be scheduled on the 3rd, the 4th. In terms of timing for the goal setting that Councilmember Koberstein raised, I am anticipating having interviews with council members, individual interviews on the 9th or 10th of January, anticipating that you may have selected a council member by the 8th. In terms of governance meeting and goal setting, I'm anticipating that would begin after the 22nd, likely a governance meeting between the 22nd and the 31st, followed by goal setting.
Is everybody comfortable with shooting for the 8th?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so if we, by the end of this week, have a application ready and the process outlined, and perhaps with a little supplemental sentence about what else we're looking for, maybe beyond the regular application, and then we make a public announcement, and we have a cutoff date of you're suggesting the 3rd or the 4th?
I think the 3rd would be better for us, because we would turn around a staff report and publish on the 4th the applications, and then you would select the individual on the 8th. Now, we can set aside time for a special meeting for interviews, or you could conduct the interviews at the meeting of the 8th. If you desired to go through a formal interview process.
And if we make a decision on the 8th, is the person sworn in on the spot?
They can be sworn in that day.
Okay.
Do we like a separate time for interviews, or having interviews that night? Is that going to be a heavily loaded agenda?
It's lighter at the moment. Things change.
Could we have a special meeting right before our city council meeting to just dedicate time, like an hour,
right,
or hour and a half, just to this process?
Sure.
I think that would be helpful.
We could start at, say,
separate it from the
let's say
council
4
work.
o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the 8th.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. Okay.
Followed by
4 is better
4
than 3.
Duly noted.
Right.
Vice Mayor.
So
you could call me sir.
I think it would be helpful for people who might be interested in applying to let them know what they are free to do or not do until we meet, that they can speak to each of us individually. They just can't tell everybody else what we've told them. This is where you come in, Tom, right?
Well, so that's exactly right. There is the Brown Act is the issue here, and the open meeting law in the state of California. And while each of you is allowed to meet individually, what isn't allowed is to use that as an opportunity to serially deliberate, to have all of you get together and say, well, Councilmember A said this, how do you feel about that? Councilmember C said that. So as long as those discussions are really independent, are not suggesting any kind of serial or collective decision making, that's fine. Individual contacts are perfectly allowable.
And then the person should expect to come to the meeting, and we would have sort of the question and answer. Is that your idea? Like we have been doing for boards and commissions?
and when we'll do that at the earlier meeting, at the 4 o'clock meeting. That seems to me to make the most sense. That way we're not spreading it out. It's happening on the same day, and I think I'll have some focus there and gives you enough time to turn around the...
Right, and we could have you appoint at that special meeting that begins at 4 o'clock, or incorporate that into the later agenda that evening. Do you have a preference?
I think perhaps, in my opinion, unless I certainly want to listen to others' opinions. So, in my opinion, at the beginning of the regular meeting might be a good time to make that presentation, but I'm certainly open to listen to.
Sounds good.
I think the person has to be prepared to participate in the meeting, and if we wait until 6 o'clock to say who it is, I don't.
That's a good point.
Might not be real meaningful participation. So unless we send them all a packet, I don't know what you're planning to do.
The agenda will include some informational items that evening that are intended to just bring awareness of various general topics. So we're going to try to keep that agenda a little lighter. A good example will be just an update on the fire department since the addition of the 2 professional staff. So in terms of the application process, in order to begin to move quickly on that, what we would anticipate doing is asking the question, why are you interested in this council seat? Mm-hmm. And allowing the candidate to answer those questions, not really limit them in terms of why. So I think if we are able to put this on the street by Thursday, that will provide 3 weeks until the 3rd for a close of the application process. We'll then publish the agenda with information about the candidates. We'll schedule a special meeting at 4 o'clock. Interviews will be conducted unless there are 50 of them. And then you will make a recommendation at that meeting, and we would swear the person in at the meeting beginning at 6 o'clock. Okay.
I think that sounds good. Are we in agreement?
Yes.
Okay. So shall we move on to 10.6? And this is the first reading and introduction of an ordinance authorizing the City Council to suspend enforcement of the city's curfew ordinance, SHMC Chapter 9.12, by resolution, and review of draft suspension resolution for adoption upon effective date of ordinance. Is there any council discussion or staff that wants to?
The staff report is pretty clear. The one point I would think would be appropriate to make is that there is a revision that we are suggesting that to the draft ordinance that's before you. The staff report had made the promise that the ordinance would authorize both a suspension of the ordinance as well as a lifting of the suspension. The draft that had been in the packet didn't do that, and so the revision adds a provision that simply accomplishes what the staff report promised.
And lifts it in 6 months. Was that the time frame?
There's no time frame listed. It's simply at the council's discretion.
Okay. Is there any council discussion before I open it to the public?
I have comments, but do
you want to wait and hear?
Okay,
It's up to you. I'm going to open it to public comment. If anybody has any, there's an excellent time to practice public speaking skills for our young. Okay, excellent. Good. Thank you.
I really got nothing to say, but
it's all right.
I'd be okay with just having it be at 12 o'clock. I mean, the suspension, I guess, it would be a test period, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if it proves to be effective, then would it be then discussed to be raised to 11 or 12?
Yeah, I think that's what we'll discuss is if we have this sort of 6 month or this period of suspension to see how it goes, and it deems to be somewhat problematic, then maybe we go back to a 12 p.m. curfew, something that's later than the 10 p.m. If for some reason there's a problem, we might go. We keep the flexibility of going back to a curfew, but I think if we did so, it seemed that there was sort of a feeling that we would start at something like midnight so that it's extended from that 10 p.m. So this is a test period to see how, and I spoke with at least one police officer to get their feeling on it, and they felt, it's good, we can test it and see how it goes.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here, too. I'm going to close public comment if there's no other comment, and any other council?
I spoke with the police officer as well, and it felt like that they were willing to test it. And I really like the idea of building a positive relationship with the youth community in our town. I was really excited to see them here and engaged. I want to encourage more of that. And this seemed like a great place to do that.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Any other council comment?
Well, thank you for bringing this to our attention, and let's just see how this goes over the next 6 months. Hopefully, I think that this community of young people will respond in a good way and not take advantage of the situation. I think it's a good test for us, and we can always revisit it if things go in a direction that we're not anticipating. It would be nice to get periodic feedback over that 6-month period from our police department or others, so that we can sort of stay abreast of any issues that arise during that period. I did note in Section 1 of the ordinance, I'm not sure if this is an error or I'm in error, but it says adding Chapter 1.24 to the St. Helena Municipal Code. And I think we're amending, are we not amending Chapter 9.12? I think that's just maybe a typo from a previous
That is a
template.
typo. That
So
is a
just
typo,
want- yeah, okay.
and I appreciate the correction on that.
Okay.
It should be adding, it should be adding Section 9.12.050
Okay.
to the St. Helena Municipal Code. I think it would also be appropriate to mention something about timing on this. So any ordinance requires, except urgency ordinances, require 2 readings to become effective. And then after that, with very few exceptions, the ordinance takes 30 days before it becomes effective. So the resolution that actually suspends this won't be effective until 30 days after your second reading of the ordinance.
So shall I invite a motion now? Is this...
Can you translate that? That means that this curfew is going to stay in existence until probably the second meeting in
February.
In February.
Well,
That's what
possibly the first. I think we would bring this back for a second reading, the first meeting in January.
Right, so approximately February 10th would be
Okay.
the effective date.
All right. Curfew's still in effect for a while.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to invite a motion.
Move approval of the staff recommendation.
Second.
Do I have to say anything magical?
Just with the
Anything else?
clarifying edits.
With the clarifying edits, thank you.
Second.
Vice Mayor Dory,
Yes.
Councilmember Koberstein,
Yes.
Councilmember Shuto,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. Okay, so that's that. I want to once again thank the young folks for coming, and I hope that you'll find more reasons to come and participate and get used to being here and being involved. So thank you. So we are going to move now to item 10.7, which is consideration and discussion for Camp Wildfire Victim Assistance. This is an item that came forward with a letter from the community regarding St. Helena, the idea of St. Helena pooling our resources as a community and trying to buy some kind of an recreational vehicle or temporary lodging vehicle for relief in the fires up north. Is there some staff that can help us, or
Just a brief overview. There's not a formal staff report, so this is just an overview of the issue. The prior council meeting, there was a request to place this on the next to council agenda for a community discussion. And I just wanted to remind the council and the community of the city's new emergency preparedness link on the city's website, which links to a few different organizations, reputable organizations that we were able to find a couple of weeks ago in the wake of the fire to raise awareness of opportunities to assist victims of that fire. And so there are a number of organizations that are listed here that are receiving donations and have a process established. The letter raises other ideas, and so just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of these resources in the context of this discussion.
Is there any council discussion before I open it to the public?
No, perhaps we hear from Ann.
I'm going to open it to the public, and if, yeah.
I'm Ann Carr, and I'm the culprit here. First of all, I'd like to say congratulations to all of you on Jingle All the Way. We ran into your mom at lunch today, and we were talking about it, and she said, you know, it's just what a community is about and what we have been about for a long time, and it's just fun, and it's great, and it brings everybody together. That was kind of my feeling about this idea, that it is also something that we could hopefully do as a community and perhaps be an inspiration for other communities. I'm not exactly sure how it would work, but I have been able to do some research, and thanks in part to members of our community who've been supportive of the idea of getting money together to donate some kind of shelter. I think that the short-term needs which are represented on the website, I think they're being met. I don't know for sure, but probably considered more than the longer-term needs of these people who just need places to live. So I have found some tracks to run on, so we don't have to start from scratch. I communicated with James Woody Faircloth, who is the man from Colorado who has already raised enough money to donate it. I think he's raised enough to donate 4 RVs or trailers. I've also spoken with a reporter from the Chico newspaper who ran the story on Mr. Faircloth, and I've spoken with a representative of the First Christian churches in both Paradise and Chico. And I have copies of the forms that Mr. Faircloth used to find trailers and to take applications from victims of the fires who need shelter. The faith-based communities in Butte County are likely forming a consortium to answer the longer-term needs of victims, which obviously the main one is shelter, housing. FEMA is there, but to my knowledge, they're only there with 50 trailers at this point. And I've done also a little window shopping, looking at RVs and prices. I really appreciate your support of this idea. You have a lot on your agenda. I've been listening tonight, and if you can consider this, it would be wonderful, because I think if we do this, perhaps other towns and cities will step up, not asking the city to pay for this, just to put our name on the project. And I would be happy to work with all of you and a citizens group on the project if you wish to go forward. So, but if Amy from the Chamber of Commerce is on board, she's a pistol. I would want her help. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Pat Dell. I live at 25 San Juan. I fully support this idea. And I wanted to ask our city manager if on the website where it talks about the various agencies that you've researched, if we couldn't start something like a GoFundMe there for the purpose of see how we do. I'd be interested. I wish Ann would have said what her shopping revealed. I have no idea what an RV costs.
I found one today that was 15,000.
Yeah. But I think if it were on the city website, like a GoFundMe, and it explained specifically what it's for, we can test the waters and see if it's going to be something people are interested in. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? I will close the public comment. Do we have any council comment?
I think this is really a worthwhile thing to do. It's a matter of finding the best way to make it happen. I don't know who shops for the vehicle or whatever. But I do think that if we start to get the word out, and we have Jesse here, maybe he will write about it as well, we can start collecting donations, and perhaps Ann has a couple people she would be working with and touch base. I don't feel like the city council needs to oversee this. I think that we need to support it and, help you make it happen.
I think people do give when it's personal, and having somebody in the community that's behind it asking for the request with the city would bring more money to this. So I like that idea, but I'm very aware I don't understand the process yet. So what we're asking of the city to do, I would need to understand more about that. And it sounds like we don't know. This is a new territory. But what is our giving process? Who would oversee this? How does this work? I need help understanding this.
I think that's, the discussion here. Mr. Doring, do you have any?
No, I'm supportive of it, but I'm a cautious person, and I just want to make sure I understand what it is that we are doing to support it. How best can the city of St. Helena use its resources to help a citizens group, help a community understand what this project is. I said in emails to you that it should be organic from the community, energized from the community, with sort of a supportive role by the city, whether on our website, maybe some, and I would like to hear from the city manager as to what ideas, if any, he has, where we can share our resources to get this moving. But I really do want it to be from the community. So those are my comments.
So, having worked on GoFundMe type campaigns in the past, generally you want to pick a fixed amount of time for the giving, and I think the idea of a citizen-led effort makes a lot of sense. The city has an opportunity to share the story and help amplify the recruitment of resources. And so we can do that through an email blast to the subscribers to our listservs. We can, depending on timing, include something in our next newsletter that goes out to the community. We can schedule an update on council meeting nights to provide a little awareness of how warm that temperature is getting on the thermometer. But I think if we conceptually had encouraged the community through an individual leadership at establishing a fundraising goal, perhaps with a time frame of January to seek resources, that would be good timing for us to help amplify the message. It may get a little lost in the middle of the holiday season, but if there's a little organization that takes place and the community sponsor aligns themselves with a person that's done GoFundMe campaigns, there's some sophistication that I've watched some talented people orchestrate those. So the message, the initial ask, the follow-up, the sharing on social media can really amplify that message. And the staff would be happy to assist, but I think a community, individual-led effort makes a lot of sense.
So does it make sense at this point to suggest that the bones of the project get put together by the community, and that would be, I would think, identifying precisely what unit is being looked at, the cost, where it would be purchased, and get as many specifics put together as possible, along with the basics for the GoFundMe page, and then perhaps a conversation with the city staff to see if we've got all the ducks in a row.
I think from a financial standpoint, it would be easier for the city if the funding moved through an individual group that took leadership there, so no funds would touch the city. And we would be happy to amplify the message that's being delivered and the solicitation of the community's help.
Okay. Does it make sense that one council member would perhaps check in say, the next week with the community group to see where they're at, and then perhaps be a liaison back to the staff? Okay, well, I would say maybe in the next 2 weeks, just, and then if we have a council member, and if somebody on the council wants to do it, I'm happy to volunteer to be that person. And so we can just connect and then kind of make a plan about getting the basics together, come back and show the city so the city can at least see what they're supporting, and then maybe be ready by January 8th to put it to the community and say, between then and, say, Valentine's Day, that's a time to try to raise that money.
I think that would...
Would you could you come to the podium, please?
Would it be possible for me to get together with you, Mark, and talk with you about this so
Sure.
I can really get my head into it? Yeah,
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think that and we can have a conversation sometime in the next couple of days, and we'll be able to figure out how to move forward. Great. So I think we're gonna. Are we set on
For
that?
clarification on the agenda, we will anticipate providing an item on the January 8th agenda to provide an update and really a forum for an advertisement about the GoFundMe effort.
Very good. Okay, thank you, and thank you for bringing that forward. So we're going to move on to item 10.8, and that is provide direction on draft request for proposals, RFP, scope of work for feasibility planning, visioning of City Hall, library, and recreation facilities. Mr. Presswich, is this your?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. So this is continuation of work that came out of the SHAPE Committee, and at the September 17th special meeting, direction was provided to the staff to begin to work on developing a scope of work for the library, to reimagine that space, consider how the building may interact differently with the outside environment, but also reimagine the interior space, a conversation that the library community has already started. And in addition to that, direction was provided to consider amenities related to a potential recreation facility that might be located at Crane Park. And so as the staff began to individually, within the library and then within recreation, individually begin to look at scopes of work, one of the companies that had worked on recreation facilities, we looked at their scope of work, we looked at the company, and the first thing that popped up on their website was a library. And so it introduced the concept that perhaps one firm could be identified that could potentially align the community outreach and potential issues that cross over, particularly with space. And after talking a little bit more with professionals in the architecture world, we believe there are multiple firms in Northern California that might be suitable to work with on imagining space for the library, the interior needs of the building, or opportunities with the building, as well as opportunities for the exterior, and considering a general conversation about a recreational facility and programming. And so we have developed a draft scope of work, and I want to thank let's see, it was Mayor Galbraith and Councilmember-elect Chateau and members of our library community and representative of our Recreation Commission, Parks and Rec Commission, who met twice to review and develop a scope of work in partnership with the staff, and that's attached to the staff report today. What's important to note in this scope of work, which the vision would be with the blessing of the council, we would begin to introduce an RFP process and solicit firms, and probably from a timing standpoint, hold interviews in late January with an award of contract anticipated in early February. The vision is that there may be a firm that can provide both, and we can achieve some economies of scale that way. If we find a rock star consultant for the library, for example, that does not do work with recreational facilities, we've created a flexible RFP here where we can truly bifurcate this and move in two different directions. But we think there may be an opportunity to find one firm, and the process will play itself out through the RFP process. And we would continue to want to work with representatives of the council to align with the interview process, as well as members of the library community and our recreation community. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Are there any council questions or comments before I open it to the public?
Are you going to say something? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a little concerned about the aggressive timeline, especially over December, to get really good responses, and I'm wondering if you're concerned about that. Deadline for receipt of proposals January 16th. I'm concerned about that, but maybe you have other thoughts and experience that lead you to believe that is a sufficient amount of time.
And one of the reasons we have a fairly lengthy discussion calendar today is I didn't want to lose any time over the holidays. I was hoping to get started with the RFP process now rather than postpone this conversation until January 8th to keep the momentum going. I did try to stretch it as much as possible to give people time coming back from the new year, assuming that some people would have family members on vacation through the first week of January. And so while it is a relatively short timeline, if we push out, if we're comfortable with the process, it would provide more time to just push out 2 weeks. We could extend the submittal deadline, which would give the firms a little more time, give us a little time to reach out to them. And then instead of looking at the 12th of February for the award, postpone that 2 weeks out to the 26th.
Thank you.
Any other council comment before I open it to the public? I'm going to open. Excuse me. I'm going to open up public comment on this item.
Glenn Smith, Dean York Lane. I have, excuse me. I have two suggestions and one compliment on the RFP. I was really very pleased to see that the vendor bids would not include pricing until you had selected the finalist. As a consultant and having done years and years of RFPs and seeing clients go right to the cost page first, I kept admonishing them that there's no right price for somebody that can't do the job. So I think that was a very good way to set the pricing arrangements as a follow-on. Two suggestions. One would be to consider adding a section to the RFP that would describe the opportunities and issues for each of the three properties. As an example, the problem with City Hall, obviously it's an office building right next to a park, and it really adds nothing to the park itself. And yet there's an opportunity, as you think about that, or vision that building, to integrate it in some way into the park with resources to do that. Another example would be the library's very special position in our community, and the many cultural and community events that it brings in, and perhaps the opportunities then are to build out the spaces in a way that allows those activities to be better presented to the community, to be more effective for us. So something along that line. The second suggestion is to consider adding a bidders conference And I looked at the timeline also and thought that it was pretty aggressive. But the idea of a bidders conference would give all the vendors an opportunity to hear from the either the city council or the administration about what it is we're really looking for. And those questions and answers can be transcribed and sent out to everybody, so everybody has essentially the same information, but it does give them an opportunity to probe you all or some subset of you all as to what we're looking for. So those are my suggestions, and I'm delighted to see that we're moving forward on the recommendations the SHAPE committee put forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Elaine DeMann, and I'm a little unaware of exactly what the discussion is, but I wanted to throw this out there as a thought for the library, assuming that it's going to stay in its same general location. I seem to recall a gentleman speaking at one of the meetings concerning the development of that property and talking about the value of the vineyard that surrounds the library, and that it is a huge wealth of genetic information is contained within those vines that are there in the historic vineyard directly around the library. So it seems to me that it might be a really interesting thing, particularly for this community, to look at our library as also being a resource, an informational resource of genetic diversity. And this is becoming particularly important, having a place to store all this genetic information with climate change and the monoculturalization that's going on. But here we would have this wonderful resource for people that are looking to hybridize or to look for other varieties that might work in different climates. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jack Stewart, 22 Crane Avenue, and I'm here as chair of the Friends and Foundation of the St. Helena Public Library. I'm sorry that two high school boys left. I would have just told them when I was in high school, we just drove with our lights off and came in through the bathroom window. But I guess easy solutions are hard to find. And I wanted to also express my appreciation for former Mayor Alan Galbraith and former council member Peter White for their years of service, and to congratulate Mayor Jeff and Vice Mayor Sir. And of course, Anna Shuto, brand new on the council, and Mary, you're still here, and I'm hoping that's a good thing.
Thank you.
For all of us. So I just I wanted to say that two members of our organization, our executive director Maria Stell, who's here, and I sat in on a couple of meetings with the city manager on the consolidation question of the RFPs, and I just want to read the unanimous statement that our board of directors approved just last week or the week before. I should say first, though, that Friends and Foundation of the St. Helena Public Library has nothing to do with the management of the building or operations. We raise money for the very numerous and varied programs that are put on by the library. We fund purchases of all sorts of materials, and we do also supplement payroll for temporary employees, temporary and part-time employees. Here's our statement. Friends and Foundation endorses the recommendation of city leadership to seek one qualified firm to guide the city's plans for 3 important projects: rebuilding City Hall, modernizing the library, and creating a recreation center. We look forward to participating in this vital undertaking. And then I just want to read a couple of points of a statement we made back in May that was made when we were still working actively on the SHAPE process. Well, Friends and Foundation does not oppose the construction of a new 21st century library. Our board of directors believes such a decision should be part of a master development plan and involve library trustees, library staff, and a library consultant. All of us must remember that the present library was built and principally funded with donations from the community. As the consultant hired by the city confirmed, the library is the appropriate size for a town of our size. If anything, it could be expanded to provide more suitable event space. We note that St. Helena Public Library has 5 times the per capita visits and 4 times the circulation as the California average. As advocates for the library, Friends and Foundation opposes any action that would diminish its scope or otherwise damage the institution. But I'll repeat that Friends and Foundation does not oversee library operations or maintain its building. Our mission is to advocate for the library and to raise funds to support educational and cultural programs, materials of all kinds, and supplemental part-time staffing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I was asked by Skip Lane, the chairperson of the Library Board of Trustees, to apologize for not being here tonight. He's sick. He had planned to be here. Last week, there was a special meeting of the Library Board of Trustees. The main agenda item was this RFP and the process behind it. And the Library Board supports this scope of work and the RFP.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I should point out that the Friends and Foundation is paying for all of our craft supplies for the kids, for the kids dropping crafts and the gingerbread.
Wonderful. Thank you, Friends and Foundation. Is there any other public comment?
I'm just going to expand a little bit on something Glenn said and something I talked about in the SHAPE committee, and that is that the library really is our cultural center. It's going to be years and years and years before we can build any other kind of cultural center. So I hope that there are specific instructions to the consultant who's going to determine what happens on the inside of the library about expanding a space for programs, because programs are already happening there. I'd like to see the library be able to have a room that was insulated so it's more quiet, so programs could take place there. And I'd also like to see, and this is something down the road, but along with that additional space, there would need to be additional staff to manage those programs that go over into the evening. But it is, in essence, our cultural center, and I think, along with being a library, planning needs to be done having that in mind.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment on this? Seeing none, I will close the public comment and see if we have any council discussion. Is there anybody that would like to go first?
Well, I have a couple of thoughts I'd like you to respond to. This is a lot of work, and I think we need to prioritize what is really important and what ties into other things. My inclination would be to have the recreation work be the last piece of it, because I see the determination of the library as having some impact on what happens on the City Hall property. We've talked about event space there. We're talking about blended use, going to be looking at maybe what we're going to do there. And to me, one of the most important things here is in the qualifications, we're asking for a clear sense of where new amenities and technologies are headed in their applications in the library, in the city hall. And the question I want answered is, okay, we need this in the library, and here's the library in the future. And for me, the bottom line is it so expensive to do that at the current location that we have to think twice about it? Or is it something that should maybe move over to the city hall property? I know people are maybe not happy with that, but I don't think the sky is the limit. And often when you remodel a building, it gets to be more costly and more difficult than if you would have just started from scratch. So I would kind of like to, push that to the forefront of what should the library be? What do we imagine it to be? What does the community want? And see if we can get, I see we have like 3 sets of drawings. Without getting too deep into it, kind of stop and have a little bit of a gut check and say, okay, are we going to keep going, on this path or what? Because we're talking about a tremendous amount of overall infrastructure work. And I think we have to keep a handle on, the costs.
It's helpful for me to add a little clarification here too, because part of the design of the RFP is we've intentionally designed this in a way where after an initial needs assessment and analysis of the parcel, for example, with Crane Park, we've set this up in a way where the council can pause after, and we will be asking the firm to itemize their costs for each building and for each task. And so we will have the opportunity, based on information that's produced, whether we move forward at that point in time or whether we pause, for example, and reprioritize. So let's say, for example, that we finish the needs assessment for the library and rec facility, and we decide that the rec facility should pause at that point because our focus is going to move to the library and begin design work on what those amenities would look like and refine the cost estimate and then develop eventually a funding strategy. So the design here hopefully will complement the comments that you just made in terms of creating an opportunity for us to pause at certain points based on a variety of issues.
I think that's important because in my mind, it's a lot easier to start with bare ground and talk about a recreation building and what it should be and what has to be in it than talking about a building that means a lot to the community and what are you going to do with it, what can you do with it, and what can't you do with it. And like I see here, we get to task 3 and we have cost models. I'd like to see some preliminary cost early on. I guess I don't want to take people down a path and make people think we're going to build a Taj Mahal here for the City Hall and a Taj Mahal here for the library and something in Crane Park without really identifying the cost and knowing how we're going to pay for it all.
And we do have a statement in here that indicates at the very beginning of this process that the consultant would discuss with the city council the order of magnitude budget. So we're not going to necessarily lock anyone into a number, but let's clarify that we're maybe not seeking the $100 million library. Sorry. Now, but what is an order of magnitude for a recreation building, for example, if we have these other amenities on the docket? And I think some form of an initial conversation with the consulting firm will give them a little sense of clarity on what type of ambition we have and what type of available funding we might have for each of the facilities.
I like the idea of this because when I'm in the library, what I was struck with is I don't want the library to get to the place where City Hall is. when we decide that it's time to do something, which seems past the point of when we should have done something, when we're touring that with SHAPE.
You mean physically?
Physically, you know, it's like we let it go too
deterioration,
long.
yeah.
Right. And so I like the idea of being forward thinking and looking at it now. It's the heart of our community. People love it. I know that City Hall is our first priority to get that done, but by looking at this, we'll have this master plan of understanding how it all fits together, what it could be and how much it'll cost. And Park and Rec, even though I get that it's the last priority, I think it is important to know, because we need to know if it's going to, are their offices going to be over at City Hall? Can they be over at Crane Park? This will take the work of SHAPE and keep it going on the path so that we can fully understand how we use all of the buildings. What goes, what stays, what's the best use for them.
I want to focus in on the comment made by Pat Dell. I agree that the library has been a de facto cultural center. How do you foresee us making a decision whether it continues to be a de facto cultural center or whether there are other options to explore? Where in the process will that decision making happen? And how is the council going to be involved, and how is the community going to be involved in that? And is it important to look at the timing of that when we give direction to these consultants? Because in my mind, that's an unanswered question. In many people's minds, it may already be answered, but I don't think that it has been answered by this council yet. And so, it's an important topic of discussion, and how do you foresee us going forward to answer that critical question?
So in terms of the library, I know in conversations with the library director, and I think anecdotally with others, the library there are some amenities within the building that they desire, and separate programming space for events is something that, instead of having the program happen in an open space, there's an interest in having some component of the building dedicated to space that can be available for a specific program that doesn't necessarily disturb other patrons at the same time, so that things can run concurrently. There's also an interest in a number of, cultivating some meeting room space where groups can gather and talk amongst themselves within a space that doesn't necessarily disturb other patrons. And I think that in many ways, we don't know the answers to the questions until we convene the community together to talk about it. And I think, led by a strong professional consultant who has experience with these types of conversations, has an eye on the library and community and where it's headed, I think that in some ways, it's difficult to answer what the ambition might be down the road. I think there potentially are some overlaps with space and programming needs, and so I think in fact, I started with the idea that this would simply be library, the possibility of library and recreation coming together, and the meetings that we had. The participants asked the question, well, why isn't City Hall part of that discussion as well? Because we see a potential overlap, and we're concerned that consultants would be stepping on each other's toes as they're conducting outreach. And so we saw economies of scale, particularly with the public outreach, where we will take, hopefully, a consultant that will take the roadshow to the community as opposed to identify a time and place and ask everyone to show up. We may still do some of that, but I think the vision here is that we take the conversation to the community. And so the library community, the recreation community, the community in general, I think we want to make sure that we get some really good feedback on what works and what could be better with the library to help us make sure that this is a holistic but collaborative conversation.
To me, one of the benefits and attractiveness of this whole idea was to have somebody come in from the outside and walk around our library and do sort of a self-assessment of how is it functioning, Where is it in terms of what current libraries are doing? And have this person sort of give a report to people, not have it be drafted, not have it start with, we work in the library and we use the library and here's what we want to do. I think it has to be a blend of the two things, and it needs, I don't think we're just hiring this person to come in and say, okay, here, I'm going to give you this room because you said you wanted it. I think it's a matter of saying, if you want to keep this library modern and you want it to continue to serve the community, here's what I think you have to do. So it's a more imaginative approach to what the options are. And I'm a little worried that we're constraining what can actually come out of this. You know, I think that should be the absolute first step, just a cold assessment from the outside. You don't really need that for the recreation department. I mean, we don't have the building. But I wouldn't want to lose the value of that kind of input from somebody who has, as you say, a clear sense of new amenities and technologies, where they're going, and, you know, what this library could be.
Are you not seeing that on the RFP? Is it not clear as you read it?
There's a lot in this RFP, and I'm not exactly sure where it's going and at what point. I'd like to see some checkpoints of, you know, maybe more of a timeline. But I mean, I'm not opposed to it, but I want to understand what the overall direction to the consultant is going to be. It's not that you come and you listen to what people want to do and then you figure out how to do the building. To me, I think it's first you come here and from the outside, and you have expertise in library design, and you give us your assessment first, and then we get into the nitty-gritty. And I'm not sure I am getting that.
And I think this is the value of, you know, the instinct here was we need to make sure that what we conceived of with council liaisons was endorsed and agreed upon by the full council before we move into the RFP process. But I think the continuation of a council liaison or two, perhaps in this case, helps provide the continuity to make sure that those types of comments are incorporated into the interview process, that when we interview the firms, we will not have drafted the final contract at that point in time. We do want to try to identify a scope of work now that will work in the future, and that's why we're here to consider amendments that might be necessary. But I think if that kind of concept is broadly felt by the council, we need to perhaps emphasize some of that up front, perhaps in task 1. But my vision has always been that task 1 there's a stopping point after task 1 where we check in with the council and we ask, do we move forward? The same thing happens after task 2. Are we ready to move forward? And when you finish task 3, you're about ready to go to bid on a project. So this is a long timeline and process to get to the end of step 3.
And if I just could ask a question, and during that process, there will be opening for public engagement and public input from the community as well.
Sure, and I think this is, I think to Councilmember Koberstein's point, we don't need a facilitator. We need a professional who works in this space that can give the city advice and provide consultation and best practices, which we've tried to emphasize, but I think perhaps we can pull that out of the consultant in a slightly different way, perhaps even make some modifications to the language here to be sure that is a clear expectation of the consultant.
I share Councilmember Koberstein's concern, and that was the genesis of the question I just had. I don't want a preordained product. I want the imagination and expertise of folks who've been around a lot of libraries and seen them develop. and not preclude or assume that use will continue.
Right, and I don't want to jump ahead into the next item on the council agenda, but just the interview process with the next item on our agenda. There was a comment made during one of the interviews that it's not going to be designed by every individual, designed by democracy. We are looking to the design professional to provide us their expertise in thinking about our downtown environment. I think this is similar to what you're emphasizing here, which is we're looking for their expertise and their thinking about our asset and how we might meet the expectations of the library community, but we're looking to their expertise for ideas and solutions.
I don't want to monopolize the discussion, but I'll give you a specific example. Under task 1, under the library, you have 3 bullet points. The middle bullet point is evaluate the opportunity to incorporate the outside vineyard setting and mountain views. That is a very specific direction, and I think tells somebody, take this space and do that. And I think that would come later. Once and any creative person, if you decide the library is staying where the library is, any creative person who walks in there is going to say, you need to do that. But here, it makes it seem like we've already kind of decided what's happening. And I'd rather take that out. I mean, I think what we really want is a needs assessment for the library, and we want to know where the technology is going. And then, I would like somebody's gut reaction of, can we do this in this building? And if we can, then it's full steam ahead.
Can I make a suggestion? We discussed this a little bit. We've had the council liaisons on the downtown project. That's the next item. And we had council liaisons on this, which was Anna and Mr. Galbraith. With Mr. Galbraith's departure, my thought was that somebody that's on the downtown committee, either Mary or Paul, also become part of this library city hall committee, so that there's some continuity in the thought. I could volunteer to step in, but then there would be, in my mind, a disconnection in the overall discussion. So do we want to, have that discussion about the liaison committee?
I think that we should do that when we have the 5th council member. I mean, we have some assignments we're going to have to move around because we have some spaces now. My personal view is, I would like to continue to work on the downtown, but that's a big project. I'd like other people to, who really have an interest, to spread the work around. We have housing to work on, we have downtown to work on, we have all kinds of things. And so I agree there should be 2 people. I think Anna's a great choice, and maybe we should wait and shuffle our assignments around once we've picked a 5th council member.
So where does that lead? Do we need to open public comment? Is there more input? Yes, so I will open public comment. I think this is a substantial issue.
I think the word Ms. Goberstein is looking for is we need a program. And I think there's professionals that do nothing but program spaces. And I think they need to look at the library and they need to program that. They need some input from the people there, but I think you'll find there's a lot of firms that do programming before they do anything else. And I think that you don't have a program yet when I'm reading your stuff. And I think I agree with what Glenn is saying. I think he and I are pretty much in the same boat with this. And I haven't really talked to him about it, but just listening to him, I think they were pretty well in the same boat. And I really think we need to do a program. I'm sure Noah understands what I'm talking about. And I think that's imperative that you do that with these buildings.
Thank you. Is there any more comment?
Jack Stewart again, but speaking as an individual, I think to Council Member Koberstein's point about the building of the library, it's useful to think that when what we call the new library, when that was built, 40 years ago. Looking back at that time when that library was being built, it was like 40 years before that point would be 1939. So that indicates the difference or the actual age of the existing library. We call it the new library because it's not the Carnegie building, but it's 40 years old. That's almost 2 generations. So I agree with, as an individual, our group has not taken a position on the existing building one way or the other, but I think we have to consider, it's all about money. I mean, I now, because of what I'm doing with the foundation, every time I go away to another town, I'll look at the library. And I've seen new libraries in Los Gatos, California, in Jasper, Alberta, in Bozeman, Montana, and these brand new 21st century libraries are astounding, and they are multi-use, and they do serve as not just as ad hoc community centers. They actually are community centers with many different uses and lots of daylight coming in through the windows, and art galleries and conference rooms and all sorts of things. Just, can Little St. Helena raise that kind of money to do that? But I think we need to be looking forward for the next 40 years. What will, if whatever we do with the library now needs to last another 40 years, we need to think that far ahead of time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment? I'm going to close the public comment, and my thought is there anything, if we are looking at the time frame of wanting an RFP to go out to move things forward, is there something, Mary, that you think could be done with this current RFP that would address some of the issues you're bringing up so that we could kind of stay on a time frame?
Well, I haven't done a red line of it, if that's what you're asking, but I mean, there's a lot in here. I mean, it almost seems like an overwhelming amount of work. I'd almost rather issue an RFP of here's stage 1 and be real specific about what we want you to do in stage 1. To me, when I look at this looks to me like it's an invitation to somebody to redesign what we have and come up with 2 or 3 different schemes. And to me, that's not the imaginative way I thought we were going to approach this. So I don't want to be the one to rewrite this. I have concerns about it.
Mr. Doring, do you have any thoughts?
I'd like to offer a couple ideas. Just to the second bullet point comment that Councilmember Koberstein was raising, if we deleted that and we changed in the third bullet point the reference to the library's physical spaces, if that said library's physical structure, I think the assumption can be inside or outside, and we can remove the idea that specifically there.
You're still talking about improving the library. I think the question is, can this happen in the existing building, or does it have to be a new modern building to really make it work? I think that's part of the question. The overwhelming message I get when I look at this is work with the existing building and try to bring it up to
and that was the direction provided on the 17th, was go study this building. I think another approach that I'm interested in feedback on would be limit the scope of work now for this RFP to task 1, but reference what might happen following if there was interest on the part of the city to progress farther down the road on elements related to any of the buildings, that we would envision something that looks like task 2, something that looks like task 3 before construction. But we're not prepared to, and we don't want costs associated with those tasks at this point in time.
Yeah, this started because we had a shape analysis of the library and we had some issues with the roof. And it really caused us to say, well, are we going to fix that roof, or do we really need to look at the library and see that it's going to last for another generation? And That's what I'm.
Would it be adding a fourth bullet point of opening up the idea of what else is possible? I mean, it may be a company gets it and looks at it and says, here's what we can do with what's there, and here's some ideas for if you wanted to make some more larger changes. That would open it up.
Yeah, and I think there has to be some cost. I mean, it's not going to be detailed, but there has to be some cost associated with the two paths so that we can stop and say, okay, you know, we really want this to happen, but we got to look at everything else that is being programmed and figure out, okay, do we pause? Do we fix the roof? And 3 years from now, we launch into this program, or, you know.
And then I do also think that it's important for whoever receives the RFP to understand that they're not operating in a vacuum, that we're also, you know, looking at City Hall too. So if somebody's feeling is that some of these elements could be at the City Hall building in this newly envisioned City Hall, that's part of what we're asking them to put their brains on too, so that we're not limiting them.
I thought reading this, it was going to come out with the needs assessment, but that's when they started to do that first task. That's when these ideas would come out. But I hear what you're saying, Mary. I think having spent time at the library, even the last week, when I go in there and I just happened to be standing there where another person came up and said, "You're not moving the library, are you?" I mean, I just hear it nonstop, even still, from that one comment or two from SHAPE. So it's hard for me to imagine the community embracing the library moving anywhere. So when I read this, I'm sure I was operating off of that assumption that it was staying in that current site.
Well, I also think maybe what Mary's saying is that even if it stays in the current site, is it worth reimagining the structure itself rather than remodeling the existing structure? So to me, if there's a possibility without it causing a problem for the consultant, is to look at it in a couple different ways. If it's redeveloped on the same site, and some of the meeting space that would be necessary there is also something that would work at the City Hall, so there's some tie-in. I mean, I agree that giving the consultant the room to imagine the best possibilities is worth at least making the note for them so that they're not feeling constrained. I think it's worth having an opening for them. If it doesn't dramatically shift the RFP. What is your thought, Mr. Presswich?
Well, I think in many ways we're not committed to the scope of work until we sign a contract, and I think that in the interview process, what we're looking, this is free to us. This is a free exercise to solicit ideas and responses from firms, and it will be helpful to have 2 of the 4 council members participate in the interview process, along with representatives from the recreation and the library communities, to evaluate these firms. And I think we'll find the firm or firms that we want to work with through that process, and we will have the flexibility at that time to recommend adjustments to the scope of work, and we'll be able to probe some of these questions that we have. And frankly, we probably ought to build in a tour of facilities, come to think of it, in the context of this conversation, because while all of the firms will likely take an opportunity to look at the buildings before they bid, I think they'll have some initial thinking on their own about, gosh, we may want to reimagine the building in a different way, or this is a great space to work with, and I can't wait to figure out how we adjust it for, the next 20 or 30 years. So I think there's an advantage of going through the process and then considering the idea of pivoting a little bit on the scope, but with some council member involvement and members of the recreation and library community involvement, in terms of whether we feel like this is not necessarily, is there another way of doing this that makes sense, that aligns with, I think, the council's interest long-term.
What do you think?
Well, I think we have Anna on the committee already as one council person, so maybe you two could get together and just review this and change the language a little bit based on our comments. I don't know. That'd be my suggestion.
Happy to do that. But then I can't talk to you about it until the next meeting.
So my interest in need for clarity is the council direction to bring this scope back for another review, or to proceed with, the edits that we would make, go to bid, build in enough time for firms to take a good look at the opportunity and consider it, and then bring you back a recommendation for a contract in the late February timeframe, early March maybe. And we're anticipating, I would anticipate task 1, I know the full task 1 and 2 probably, and maybe even 3, could have been accomplished within 5 months. So when we begin, it doesn't necessarily have to take that long to accomplish only the initial needs assessment before we would pause and provide a report on what the feedback was.
Any thoughts? My thought is to move it forward without having to come back to us with some minor edits to sort of open up the imagination a little bit, with the understanding that whatever does come back is going to get plenty of public engagement and the opportunity for the public to help shape some of the direction. But my thought is moving forward, then we don't lose time. If it's sort of, when it comes back, we still will have opportunities to shape where this is going. Does that seem acceptable?
Yeah.
I'm only concerned about the timeline. I share Paul's concern that to put something out on the street right now, a couple weeks before the holiday, and expect proposals back by the middle of January is maybe a little aggressive. I don't think it would be a bad idea to rewrite this, approve it at the first meeting in January when we have a new person, and give everybody 2 extra weeks to respond to proposals, extend it by maybe 2 weeks. I'm kind of worried we're not going to get a lot of response in the next.
I'm okay with that. I mean, I think that sounds like a reasonable. Does that sound? If we give it a little more time to work on, and then by the first meeting of January, be ready to send it out then?
Yeah, that's fine. And the library's been here for 40 years, so it can last another 2 weeks. I think I
feel like I've been at this council meeting for 40 years.
What I would like to do, though, is when we work together on amending the language here, I'm going to feel more comfortable bringing it another round of meetings with the recreation and the library interests, to have them take a look at that and participate in that process and bring you an edited version of this. From a concept standpoint, is the council more interested in limiting the scope of work to task 1 at this time, or a broader?
The answer is yes for me.
It's cheaper.
With the idea that there's, you can mention these other things obviously in the discussion, but yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. So we have direction?
I think so.
Okay. All right, so we shall move on to item 10.9. This is a consideration and proposed adoption of a resolution approving a professional services agreement with BKF for St. Helena downtown street improvements in an amount not to exceed $529,000, and authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement. 2, authorizing the city manager to execute all grant-related documents pertaining to CIP project R18-81. And 3, authorizing a budget increase of $234,000 to design in CIP project R18-81 in fiscal year 2019/20, with funding allocated from fiscal year 2019/20 SB1 and gas tax funds.
Thank you, Mayor. So This is the continuation and really a very significant first step on follow-up related to the grant that was awarded to the city about 2 years ago, related to our downtown sidewalks and related streetscape amenities. And so if you'll recall, at that time, we were fortunate enough to secure $1.2 million of construction funds with the idea that the city would fund the design. And subsequent to that, more recently, the council adopted a downtown economic strategy that focused on people, places, process. And this really speaks to place, a recognition and an acknowledgement that we can do more to enhance the pedestrian experience downtown. The sidewalks obviously are in dire need of addressing and replacing. We anticipate tree conflicts and root conflicts with some of our utilities, and we envision a need and an opportunity to upgrade the laterals with with each of those buildings. But this is really an opportunity also to think about the other amenities within that streetscape that can be improved. So think benches, think trash receptacles, think about the opportunities related to beautification of the alleyways, and then rather than just remodel the kitchen, consider the adjacent streets of Oak and Railroad and intersecting streets like Hunt and Adams. And so in this RFP process in late 2018, we received 5 responsive proposals in October. We reviewed those and recommended that we interview each of the 5 firms to help the city design from a design and engineering standpoint. What we envisioned and what came through these proposals was a need to engineer the improvements, but also to first identify what those improvements are. And so there's really a marriage between an engineering firm and the design side of the house. And so each of the 5 firms that we interviewed had in many ways collaborative proposals. And so I want to also acknowledge that during the interview process, we had 2 council members participate in that, Vice Mayor Doring and Council Member Koberstein. We also had members of the business community participate that, and I want to acknowledge Aaron Martin and Marcus Robbins, who's in the audience today, who assisted us along with city staff. And so through that process, we are recommending a contract with BKF and their landscape architect, Gates and Associates, to provide initial streetscape ideas, public outreach, which the Gates team has branded Cultivate St. Helena. And I think the review committee really came away believing that this firm understood what this project was for the city. They have an interest in capturing the soul of St. Helena, not replicating something in some other city, but really focusing on what the soul of St. Helena is and how we can cultivate a better pedestrian experience for our downtown, for our community, and those that visit us. We envision phasing this. There's an important timeline related to Caltrans approval, and we'll be working with Caltrans on this project. And the interview process itself with the multiple firms revealed some good ideas about how to navigate that difficult process. And we have a fairly hard deadline in October of 2020 that we'll be working towards to receive permitting to move forward. But there's a lot of engineering to take place. There are conversations that need to happen with the community and the business community, the building owners, and the community in general. And we think we've found the right team to help us moving forward. We have representatives of both of the firms here tonight if you would like to ask them any questions, and the staff and I are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any council comment to begin with?
And you're suggesting, just to clarify, both of the firms from the same team, just for, yeah. Right.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Do we want to have the representatives speak, or do we want to hear from the public first? Is there a...
I think it would be nice to hear from the firm, and maybe people would understand why we are as excited about them as we are. And
So why don't
Great. Please.
We'll invite both the Gates team and the BKF team here. I will tell you that, and I like this analogy, the streetscape, the design side of this project was referred to as the frosting for this project, and I think that perhaps we can talk first about some of the frosting and the opportunities that already that the Gates firm has seen as opportunities with our downtown. We really like the idea. We really like the way that they broke our downtown into sort of three pieces, and then perhaps some comments on the navigation that will take place as we move forward in working with Caltrans on the project.
Thank you. It's good to see some of you again. I have to say, when we had the interview, it was delightful. I just felt it was just fun, and I'm very excited to work on St. Helena. We purchased a home here a couple of years ago and love this area. To share, it's like I feel like I want to go through the interview slides, so you just have to imagine what we talked about. So when we talked about the downtown and breaking into segments, so there's sort of the entry throat, as you cross the bridge and kind of pass the market, there's sort of this transition where you move from being an auto to a pedestrian. Then you have 2 blocks that are sort of what we call the downtown core pedestrian, and not just those 2 blocks, but also Railroad and Oak. You know, it's that square that sort of makes the downtown core, and then what we call the civic block. And each one of those segments is part of the greater overall pedestrian experience, but you have to respond in very different ways. And so one of the key things for us is in the core downtown, the architecture itself sort of holds the street edge. But when you're on the entry gateway and you're in the civic blocks, particularly in the entry gateway, streetscape, you need the streetscape to hold the street edge, because right now it just sort of disappears. And then when you get down to what we call the civic block, this architecture a little bit holds the edge, and the vegetation there holds the edge. So you have a sort of a distinct character. So each part of it, we want to create something unifies, but recognizing each segment has a different feeling. The second thing that was really important to me is, in my mind, what we want to create is this pedestrian, bike, dog-friendly environment that cars happen to drive through. So it's that different kind of thinking. I know it may be, but so the idea is people in that entry gateway throat, to peel them off to, continue off on Silverado Trail if they want to go to wineries, or to continue off to go to parking. So as soon as possible, we change motorists into visitors, so that people sort of arriving, so it's more comfortable to move downtown. That we think that people can arrive from other directions, like maybe the wine train dropping people off, the Vine Trail bringing bicyclists, to create sort of a different kind of feel. And then to think about Money Way differently, as opposed to sort of the back door, that how can that transform into a corridor that moves people around. I shared a lot of times when I go to look for a parking space, first of all, I didn't even realize one of the public parking lots off Money Way for like 2 years. I couldn't even find it. So, so you need to kind of pull, push into the streetscape a little bulb out or something, so that people looking down see certain areas, like looking down to City Hall in the park. You're in the downtown and you don't realize that exists there. So making those kind of wayfinding kind of elements that connect those resources together. I'm sort of trying to remember all the ideas. So one of the parts about the gateway throat is there's a lot of sort of red or no parking areas, particularly in front of the market and such in that area. And we talked about making kind of an art walk, so it's moving the curb into the street and creating a pedestrian experience. So the minute that you come across the bridge, and we looked at, I think it's the star, the columns there, bringing it down and creating sort of a pedestrian portal there, and then kind of having a art walk. Because right now, when I walk past the gas station, I walk past there, I don't want to walk there. It's like, to me, that's all forgotten. So really kind of extending that pedestrian experience out and potentially connecting. If we build, you can't, in my mind, I'm drawing on the map, and I'm sure you can't see that. If we build a parking garage out there, we need to have people be able to move and communicate around. So those were some of the ideas that we were sharing, with a lot more pictures and diagrams. I don't know, you guys want to jump in on anything else?
Well, it's wonderful to have you here, and I think we're we're certainly at a point where things have been changing. We're feeling the intensity of traffic. We know we need to sort of reimagine how we manage it, and doing it creatively. We know that there's infrastructure problems that haven't been looked at for a long time that need to be addressed. So we know we need to do this project, and in doing what we need to do, what can we then imagine the best possible result of that? So it's really great that you're here, and from what I heard, the response was everybody just thought what you presented was great. So I'm really looking forward to moving forward with this, and I don't know if there's other council comments now. I can open the public comment.
Let me also invite Dane Johnson just to say a couple words about, he's with BKF. He's
gonna make it work.
and he's going to help us navigate the Caltrans permitting process.
Well, and if I seem a little lethargic, it's not because I don't want to be here. I'm getting over a little illness here, so bear with me. But what a great council meeting to be part of. I mean, a whole new council being sworn in. I mean, it was wonderful to see tonight, all the community coming out. I mean, that's what we're here for, and that's what makes our, jobs wonderful to be part of. And so, just real quick, I'm Dane Johnson. I'm project manager for BKF, who will be the project manager for this project. And I've been in the industry for about 20 years, and 14 with BKF. So I've been providing professional engineering services for a myriad of multiple different types of projects, anywhere from land development to commercial development, K-12, healthcare, and especially streetscapes and complete street projects. And so we've been through this process many times. We actually just finished a project with Gates, Farm Bureau Road in the city of Concord. That was a totally new complete streets project. And then just to get to the question, for Caltrans, we have a lot of experience, mitigating and moving through the process. We just went through this, as I mentioned to Eric in the interview, on Van Ness Avenue, which is Highway 101, right in the heart of San Francisco. And so we were able to get through the process smoothly because we were able to come up with different strategies for the streetscape itself. Because you'll find that Caltrans will want to add things to the project, or come up with something, right, to say, oh, well, this is a difficult project, so it needs to go to the next level of review. So it's getting in there really quickly and making sure that they know that this is just a sidewalk improvement project, and so we don't have to go through the different myriad of processes that they have. Depending upon how much money we spend, there's a process called the peer process, which is up to $3 million. So there's between $1 and $3 million process that we can go through. So we just have to, once we get into the vision piece of it, once we start getting into the engineering, there's a lot of engineering involved, costs and budgets, then we can start talking about going to Caltrans and really understanding what we need to do. But it's early and often with Caltrans, and so that's what we'll do from the very beginning.
Thank you. And it seems to me that there's an interface with what we were talking about, the item before, with what we're doing with the City Hall, et cetera, in the civic corridor, as you called it. And so I'm assuming that there'll be a good dialogue with whoever we choose in that realm and with you, so that everything is cohesive as it moves.
I was making notes of the comments as we were talking. It was like, oh, this is great.
Are there any council comments? I'll open up to public comment I'll open the public comment.
Good evening, everyone. Wayne Armstrong, Main Street and Sylvaner. I just wanted to offer my voice of support for moving forward with this project. It's really exciting to have been here for 23 years on Main Street and hearing this conversation about not only addressing sort of our aging, kind of tired infrastructure, which have presented problems for all of us. Certainly the sidewalk is one that we're intimately familiar with on rather a daily basis, but also, and I think more importantly, is looking at, as a community, how we can expand our imagination. I love that word, and the idea of really maximizing the potential of this really beautiful place that we all live in and that we all love so much. So it really feels like an exciting moment for expanding our creative process in order to accomplish the things that have to be done, but also thinking about maximizing kind of the beauty of where we are. So I just support you in all of it. So thank you so much for your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no other public comment, I will close the public comment. And are there any final council comments?
I'm really excited about it. I've never seen Mark so excited after hearing the presentation. And the more I hear, the more excited I get to be about, just that I get to be a part of this. So I'm all for it.
Well, I'm going to suggest that somebody make a motion. Is this what our next stage here?
I'll move approval of the staff recommendation. There's 3 different actions recommended, and they're in the staff report.
Second.
And the roll call?
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Councilmember Koberstein,
Yes.
Councilmember Shutel,
Yes.
and Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. Very, very good. Thank you. And thank you very much for being here.
No, it was very informative. The whole thing is informative, you know? It's like all the things.
So we'll move to item 1010, which is authorization of the City Council to review otherwise confidential customer water usage data for purpose of verifying compliance with water use agreements or conditions of project approval by 1. Introduce and conduct the first reading of the ordinance adding sections 13.04.215 and 13.12.120 to the St. Helena Municipal Code, SHMC. 2, direction to the Planning Commission to review the proposed amendment of SHMC Section 17.08.060. And 3, adoption of draft resolution designating City Council Subcommittee to review water customers' usage data effective upon effective date of ordinance.
So, Mr. Mayor and Council, this is, again, another item following up on previous council direction from October 23. I know the hour is getting a bit late, so I don't think I need to belabor this item. The direction from the council on October 23 was to prepare an ordinance that would create the authorization, the explicit authorization for the City Council to essentially designate itself or a subcommittee of itself to conduct this kind of verification review of otherwise confidential water usage data. So I did that by essentially looking at 3 different parts of the city's municipal code. 2 sections in the sections of the municipal code, the chapters of the municipal code addressing both water use agreements and water neutrality on the one hand, and then secondly, a section of the city's zoning ordinance that would address the council's stated concern to conduct a verification of land use project applicants' compliance with both the representations they make during the land use entitlement process, as well as the conditions that are imposed relative to water neutrality and other water usage issues. We've separated out the proposed amendment to the zoning ordinance because that, under both the city's municipal code and state law, requires the Planning Commission to first review it and make a recommendation to you. But knowing that there is a significant community interest in moving forward with this, we also brought forward the other 2 proposals to add sections to both, as I said, the water use section of chapter of the municipal code, as well as the water neutrality section. I propose this language because I think it does confer on the council the appropriate authorization, and then also I tried to capture the direction that we had with respect to this committee that would be formed by the resolution. The obligation that it both report back to the full council and also that it hold confidential the materials and the information that it receives, because the council did make the direction, the policy direction at the October 23 meeting, not to broadly make this information available. And with that, I'm happy to take questions or suggestions from the council.
Are there any initial comments from the council? So, any public comment? Seeing no public comment, we'll move forward. So are we identifying a subcommittee tonight as well?
You would. You don't have to. Again, for the same reasons that were applicable to the adoption of the ordinance allowing you to suspend the effectiveness of the curfew ordinance. This resolution won't become effective until this ordinance becomes effective. And again, there is the 2 reading requirement and then the 30-day referendum period. But it probably would be helpful if, unless it's something that you don't want to get into this evening, for you to go ahead, adopt that resolution, make that resolution. I believe there's language in there, but if there isn't, you can make that resolution. You can make it a condition of your adoption of that to have it be effective on the effective date of the ordinance, and then that'll be done, and we won't have to bring anything back to you to do subsequently. So that would
So
that
we
would
wouldn't
make sense
necessarily
if
have
you
to
have that
identify.
interest.
So we wouldn't have to necessarily identify the names of the subcommittee tonight, but we just identify that the.
Well, there's nothing that prevents you from doing that, and to the extent that you want to keep this moving forward, and we don't have to bring you back that issue on another agenda, it would probably make sense to go ahead and do that this evening, unless you have reasons not to.
Okay. That's
I'd like to wait until we have 5.
To me, there's something makes sense until waiting till there's 5 of us to make all our assignments, and that way we kind of see how we're covering our bases.
One other point, too, to mention is that what we had said previously was that, and what I think I envisioned, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, was that this committee would be what we call an ad hoc committee. It wouldn't be an ongoing committee. The advantage of having it be an ad hoc committee is that it's of limited duration, so you don't have an ongoing task. And for purposes of staffing, it's not a Brown Act. It's not subject to the Brown Act. If you're just working on a limited duration, my understanding was that the initial concern in the community and on the council was to allow this subcommittee to be able to access this information. I don't know that there is enough work there for you, unless you certainly can decide otherwise, to have this be an ongoing committee. But I wanted to clarify that it was my understanding that this committee would function as a limited term ad hoc committee.
To me, it's, I guess, first seeing the data, seeing what we're looking at, and then maybe we'd have a better idea of determining what. But I agree that looking at it as an ad hoc committee is maybe the best way to go. So is it making a motion now to pass what we have here? Is that where we're sitting?
So I think, I think I would leave it to you to decide what you want to do. But what's before you this evening is to adopt the first reading of the ordinance that creates the 2 sections within the water title of your municipal code, the one dealing with the water use chapter and the other dealing with the water neutrality chapter. You would then also, your motion would also be giving direction to send the draft ordinance to the Planning Commission with direction that they consider that and give direction to you, which then would come back to you, and if their recommendation and your desire was to adopt that, then you would do that at a subsequent council meeting.
Okay. I would entertain that motion, or if preferable, I could make it myself.
Can I just ask
Yes,
one
absolutely.
clarifying question? This is before my time. I understand the subcommittee and the need for that. I want to understand more. What are we asking the Planning Commission to do?
So there are 2 ordinances in this package. The first one is to amend the municipal code sections in Title 13 of the municipal code. Those sections are specifically dealing with water use agreements on the one hand and water neutrality provisions on the other. those were meant to respond to the council's and the community's concern that those two issues are important. And so my intention in drafting these was to create an explicit authorization that would then allow this subcommittee to access the materials, water usage materials, for that purpose, to allow this council subcommittee to verify for itself that that compliance was taking place, both compliance with commitments made in water use agreements and compliance vis-a-vis water neutrality representations and like that. The second ordinance, and I'm sorry to go on and on with this, but the second ordinance was one that would require an amendment to the zoning ordinance, and we had to bring that separately because an amendment to the zoning ordinance requires planning commission recommendation first under state law, and it was our judgment that the council wanted to keep this moving forward, and so we wanted to get the first part of this to you as quickly as possible and to start the process too.
So both those things are so that we can have this probably ad hoc committee review what's been going on with the water.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Non-lawyer.
Does somebody want to make that motion?
I just have one last question. I'm sorry. And this relates to the Exhibit A that deals with Section 17. Your paragraph B there seems to be, well, maybe you say including without limitation, designate a committee to review customer water use and other documents. I thought part of this was, I do see in A, verification of representations made and conditions, because we had people ask us, do we know that people who indicated there was going to be a certain amount of TOT generated, have we verified that they were in the neighborhood or they weren't? So is A, the condition or verification that's made by the Planning Commission, or B?
The verification would be, it would be that this would broaden the explicit authorization of both the Planning Commission and then, to the extent an entitlement application gets to the city council, the council to impose conditions, and it's just expanding on the list of it's adding to your previously existing list of the kinds of matters for which you can impose conditions, this issue of verification of water use. That was the intention of it. And then subpart B was just simply adding language that would be very similar to the language below, but to try and carry that forward into the zoning arena so that you would be dealing, you would have this explicit authorization with respect to your land use entitlement process as well.
So can this committee verify or see TOT data?
This does not address TOT because the city manager and I we kind of set that issue aside for, I think, a different discussion. The legal issues are slightly different there.
Okay. Thanks. I wasn't clear on that.
So do we have a motion?
Let me get to my right page. Huh? Okay. So I'll move the recommended action, which consists of 3 things: the first reading of the ordinance, the draft resolution, and sending this to the Planning Commission. And I think separately we've agreed to wait on the appointment of the 2-member council committee until we have a 5th person.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Koberstein?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring?
Yes.
Councilmember Shutel?
Yes.
And Mayor Ellsworth?
Yes. Okay, we're going to move on to our final item, which is item 10.11, consideration of refunding the City of St. Helena's 2005B wastewater and 2006A water bonds. And April, is this?
That would be me.
Very
Thank
good.
you. So what we want is tonight's council consideration of refunding both of these particular bonds. We are looking to implement cost savings in our water and our wastewater funds, and currently these two bonds are eligible for refunding. So you'll see in chart 1, we have the original bond amount and then the outstanding amount. The two bonds, the first one, the 2005B, matures in 2031, and then 2006A, which is the water fund or water bond, matures in 2032. And so what we're looking at doing is seeking council's direction to go ahead and start the process of refunding. The estimated cost right now, we had some analytics run on this, is for the 2005 wastewater bonds, it would be an average fiscal year debt savings of about $5,200. So the total debt savings about $61,000. For the 2006A water bonds, the annual debt savings is about $33,000 a year. Extrapolated over time, about $429,000. So total savings to our water and wastewater systems is about $490,000 over the life of the bonds. The scenario right now, the scenario above is based on the current market rate of 3.4 and 3.42%. If we start this process and those rates end up going up high enough where the savings doesn't make sense, we can actually stop it at any time because we are not locked into those. Once we locked in the rates, then we can't stop it, but council will have the option to stop the process at any time if we ever get to the point where it's not worth it to refund the bonds. The process, if it's determined to proceed with the refunding of these, is we would first need to engage a municipal finance advisor. I am making the recommendation that we continue using Ken Deeker with Del Rio Advisors, and the amount of that contract would fall within the purview of Mark's signing authority, so we can start that right away. The municipal finance advisor will help us contract with the bond counsel, placement agent, the selection of a lender, review of the terms of the offers received. The savings that are indicated above are inclusive of what those costs would be. So that's all inclusive. There shouldn't be any surprises. The advisors that I've been working with that have been running some scenarios for me, they actually guessed high on what the costs for those particular services are, so we could actually realize more savings than what we're estimating. And I just want to point out to you that we do have the 2012B bonds for water, wastewater. We are not considering those at this time because they cannot be refunded until 90 days before their call date, which will be October 2022. So when that time comes, we will look at actually refunding that. The recent Tax Act actually eliminated our ability to do tax-exempt refinancing, so that's the reason why we can't include those at that time. But definitely when we get closer to 2022, it will be something that we're looking at. So at this point, I'm asking for discussion and any consideration for us to move forward with this process.
Is there any council discussion?
When you refer to the cost of issuance for the refunding of the bonds, what is included in the cost? Are you also including the bond counsel's cost and other costs, or just the placement agent's costs, or?
It's all of the costs.
All
so
of it.
Everyone that we have to hire to go under contract to be able to refund them, it's including all of their costs.
Would it be the same placement agent and the same bond counsel, or would it be separate for each one?
It'd be the same for both of them, yes. That's why it makes sense, even though the water side or wastewater, we're not saving as much. Since they're doing it, it makes sense just to do it all at one time.
I assume there's a window of opportunity here where we can take advantage and lock in the rates, because interest rates, I guess, by their nature, are going up, not down right now.
That is correct. So if council directs us to move forward with this, I'll actually call Ken tomorrow and start working on a contract.
Okay, thanks.
Any other comments, concerns? Any public comment? Seeing none. So the direction that you're looking for is just to proceed, and we're all in agreement?
Yes, let's proceed.
Proceed.
Very good. And that is the last item, and I want to thank everybody very, very much, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
I want a prize.
Yeah, you're going to stay the longest.
Okay.
Thank you. really different from what I expected.
Yeah, you did
It's
well.
like, whoa, you make decisions this fast, but it takes this long? Like, you know?
Pardon?
It's pretty amazing that you could just be seated and you make all these decisions.
Yeah. Well, we've been, I mean, Mark has really processed. But,
Otherwise, right? I mean, I need to know more.
yeah, absolutely.